and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started tonight, I just want to remind everyone watching that if they have public comment, to please submit it to Board Member Elizabeth Altieri, and that's at ealtieri@ellsworthschools.org. All right, adjustment to the agenda.
I do not have any, Mrs. Alexander, but I believe you have one.
I do. We actually do not need item number 5, so that will be deleted. That request was not needed. But we are going to add in there the formation of an advisory committee. All right.
Need a motion and a second to do that.
Oh, I make a motion to eliminate number 5 and to add in a directive to make a advisory committee.
Thank you.
I second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. All right. Item D, approval of the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of February 9th, 2021 school board meeting.
And we actually have 2 sets, so we can do that in one motion if you want to.
And the
special
February 23rd, 2021
Perfect.
meeting as presented.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thanks. Any discussion? All those in favor? Communications and correspondence.
I do have 5 letters, 3 resignation, 2 retirement that I will address in my report. And I believe those are circulating as we speak.
Yes.
Sorry, after second.
Those will be coming around to you too. All right. Item F, public participation. Is there any yet?
I have something in regards to a school summer program.
Okay.
Should I hold on to that until we're talking about school plans, or?
You say school summer program?
Yeah, it's a,
I think
so,
we could pose the question and
Okay.
if we can answer it, we can, or we can refer it to the right person.
okay, and this is from Jenna Beers. She said, I was wondering if there has been any thought about offering a summer school program, even a Monday, Wednesday, Friday until noon schedule without remote day expectations. Would be so beneficial to those students falling behind. Our youngest grade levels probably are in the most need of this, as they have lost out of essential building blocks for learning, reading, and math.
The answer that I would give is yes. I know the administrators are talking about summer programs and making them available for students across all of our grade spans. You know, no final determination has been made on what those are going to look like, but it's absolutely a topic of conversation.
Excellent. I do have another one, but I don't have a last name for the person, so I don't know if I can read that or not. Okay. All right.
Need to identify.
I did respond and ask if that particular person is watching and you want that read aloud. Please respond to my email.
Yep, no problem. Thank you. So item G, administrative reports. Mr. Clifford.
Good evening. My report. So whenever March rolls around, it's recruiting time for Ellsworth High School, just looking at 8th graders at EMS and their surrounding towns. And so last week, that's what myself and guidance, we did. We had Zoom calls, sometimes 3 a day. And that was all of last week, but we visited Trenton, Cave Hill, Hancock, Ellsworth Middle School, Lemoyne, Blue Hill, the Airline School, Surrey, and Beach Hill are complete. And now this week, guidance is registering those students. They were busy all day yesterday and all day today, and that's what they'll be doing for the next week and a half. So a week from Friday, we'll have a pretty good idea. We'll know exactly how many are registering and have a pretty good idea of exactly how many are coming. It is really good news that the outlining schools outside of Ellsworth have really high classes for 8th grade, so we're excited about that. And you know, quite a few of those kids are going to be coming to us. So it's great to have the class of 2025, believe it or not, preparing for them. And it'll be a great class. And esports. So we started esports, and that is going right now. And so there are 2 sports in esports. There's League of Legends and Rocket League. And so what I'm finding out more and more is, so these leagues aren't just in Maine. They go along the East Coast. And so we were supposed to play somebody from Georgia last week. That didn't happen because there were some glitches there, so we ended up playing Wayne Fleet in Portland the same day. But your schedule is all along the East Coast, which is kind of cool, and our kids are into it. And Jason Melbon, he's the advisor, and that's going well, and he's recruiting kids more and more every day. And so far so good. They've really enjoyed it, and it's kind of neat. It's really neat. And as far as numbers go, just like last time. So right now, as of today, we have 195 Maroon cohort students, 187 Gray cohort students, and 112 remote-only students right now. So remote has gone down steadily the last few weeks for sure, which is what we kind of thought. As spring rolls around and numbers go down, we're getting more and more kids back. It's great to see them back. Any questions on anything?
I
Good.
do, Dan. I'm sorry.
Yep.
The attendance overall, has that been improving? Like,
So right now it's between 18 and 20%. Not there every single day. And again, the issue aren't the in-person kids, it's the remote kids. Our Fridays, actually the last few Fridays have been down below that, which is a good sign. So the seminars and focused learning are working. But yeah, it was at 20% steadily. Now it's around 17, 18%. So a little bit of a change, but not much.
okay,
Nope.
thank you. Mrs. Gabbianelli?
Good evening. I'm going to just plug this in really quickly. So I'm going to start with the extracurricular news and the parent news, just so then I can do my presentation. But we have wrestling conditioning that has begun this week. So we have approximately 6 to 8 students signed up. We started Monday night, and we only had 1 show up, but we're hoping that those numbers increase steadily as we go through the next couple of weeks. We are also looking to start intramurals in unified basketball, but right now our numbers are not dictating that. We do not have the participation numbers currently. So if anybody is interested in participating in those 2 things, please contact Mr. Wood by Friday, because we need to make a decision on whether or not we are going to be able to actually have those things. If we don't have the numbers, unfortunately, we won't be able to run the programs. Just a reminder to parents that trimester 2 is ending on March 18th. I can't believe it. We're already at the end of trimester 2. I don't know how that happened, but it did. And then we have a professional development day on March 19th, so I just want to remind parents that there's no school for students that day. And I'm also extremely pleased to announce that we've had 2 teachers receive nominations for Hancock County Teacher of the Year, and I'd like to congratulate Becky Anderson, the 6th grade ELA and Social Studies teacher, and Matt Downs, our 5/8 PE teacher, on these nominations. So that's really exciting. We'll see where that goes. And now for the most exciting part, March is Middle Level Education Month, so I am so excited about this month. And we're trying to celebrate all month long. So what I wanted to do tonight is highlight just a few of the amazing things that happen in our middle school on a daily basis. I do want to reiterate that it's only 2 grade levels that I'm able to show tonight. I could have taken probably the whole board meeting to show all the wonderful things that happen in my school, but I just picked these 2 because I was working closely with these teachers. So I'm going to have a presentation that's going to show you about a Revolutionary War project that Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Davis did with 7th grade students. And then something from Mr. Ford where his students did claymation videos. They made claymation videos for conservation of mass. So it's really, really cool. And all month long, if you've seen my morning meetings, I'm talking about the magic in the middle. So without further ado, let's jump into the magic in the middle. And we're talking about hands-on, engaging learning activities that include technology, creativity, student choice, and learning beyond just the content.
Hello, everyone. So Ms. Brown and I were asked to share with you the process that we went through with our seventh graders and their creation of projects based on what they learned during the study of the American Revolution. So we took the project and broke it down into many parts and pieces over quite a few days. And we started by giving them topic ideas where they could choose what they wanted to study. The next part was to come up with that essential question that would help them research this question all the way through. And once they had enough information, then they were given a rubric and project ideas, and they were able to take all of that research and present it in a way that they felt that it would work for them. And so again, there was a lot of choice, which the kids seemed to enjoy a whole lot and kept them very motivated to keep going and going and going throughout this. And this lasted probably 2 or 3 weeks, probably 3, maybe even a month, it seems like. So, but the kids did use that rubric to help guide their final product. And you're going to be looking at some of them right now. Ms. Gabrielli has interviewed a few of the kids and have some sampling of what they created. I hope you enjoy it. We hope you enjoy it because we certainly enjoyed the outcome and their presentations. They did an amazing job. Enjoy.
So I was able to interview several students. It was really hard because all the students were so excited about this project. They really wanted a part of this presentation. But what I did was I met with the classes and I talked with them about, you know, the things that they learned through this project and what the process was like. And a lot of them talked to me about the fact that this is something really fun that they hadn't really done before, or that they had to persevere. Like they started their research and they picked a topic and they realized that part of the topic was some of the research they found wasn't pertaining to the time period. So they had to kind of start back up and start over again. And so there's just a lot of different skills and life skills that they learned through this project. And they're really excited to share all of that information. So whoops.
Hello, everyone.
Whoops.
So Ms. Brown
Hello again.
and I were asked.
Sorry. So here's just 2 of the interviews. We have Lauren here. She's going to tell us a little bit about her Revolutionary War project.
So we started out by doing research on the Revolutionary War, and then we had to pick a topic to do, and I chose the Boston Tea Party. And I chose it because I thought it was very interesting because it was the first act of defiance against the British rule.
And so how did you develop your question?
I developed it by digging deeper with the Boston Tea Party, and I thought it'd be cool to do a different point of views because I thought it was cool to see how the colonists saw it and then how the British saw it.
Awesome. And so do you think that this was a pivotal moment in the Revolutionary War?
Yeah, I really do. Because it kind of started the whole colonists fighting for their freedom.
Perfect. Oh my goodness. We have Lauren here. Sorry. Okay, here we go. So tell us about your Revolutionary War project.
So I did research on American spies Lydia Dara and Abraham Woodhull, and they were both spies during the American Revolution for the Continental Army. And what we first had to do was develop research questions, and Ms. Davis likes to use the term thick questions. So we basically had to come up with questions, and our goal was in the presentation to answer those questions and answer them well. And my questions were, how did American spies Lydia Dara and Abraham Woodhull contribute to the American Revolution? And how did being spies affect their lives? So I answered those questions in the presentation by doing a lot of research. I probably researched for about a week before I started putting my presentation together. And once I put together the presentation, I really narrowed down the research that I had done and just put in the important details that I thought were what they did was most important.
And how do you think that those spies affected the Revolutionary War?
Well, they both contributed in very different ways. Lydia Dara was a mother and a nurse during it, but she still managed to do a lot for the Continental Army and warn them about certain attacks. And Abraham Woodhull was, spying was kind of his whole life, that was his job. So he helped uncover what Benedict Arnold, his treason, and he also helped warn George Washington about several attacks.
And how do you feel about this project? Do you think this was a worthwhile project? Did you learn a lot?
I definitely learned a lot from this. It was definitely a lot of fun to do. We had to put a lot of work into it, which was nice, instead of just doing a test or something. It was a lot more interesting.
Awesome, thank you. So as you go through and we see the different projects, kids were able to choose posters, newspapers, models, presentation, slideshow presentations. So this is just a sample of one of the presentations. I'm not going to go through the whole thing for you, but I just want to see you to see the detail and amount of work that has gone into this. It's a beautiful presentation with a lot of interesting information. So you can I'm just going through a couple of slides so you can see. But certainly this is Bo Barrett's, and she put a lot of work into this. But the pictures that we have, you can see the trifolds, the maps of different things. Michael did a beautiful written piece. So we have a lot of different ways to present the information, and they got to choose that. I'll just go through a couple of the others. You can see Caden did a newspaper, so it was really interesting to see all of these. There's a model of a battlefield, posters, and Caleb talked about how Maine was involved in the war, so they really tried to relate it to their lives as well, which is pretty cool. And then we have Mr. Ford here, and he's going to talk to us about the conservation of mass project that he did with his students.
Good evening. Tonight you'll see a few products from our conservation of mass lesson. Our goal for this standard was for students to model their understanding of conservation of mass, knowing that when a chemical reaction takes place, the atoms break apart, create new products, but in the end still have the same number of atoms as what they had as reactants. The way the project kind of went was groups were assigned a chemical reaction that they were going to model. Groups were made up of students both at home and in school, and so they were partnered with other people. So when one group of students was in class, they would be taking the pictures of the claymation then, and then the next day their partner would kind of pick up where they left off. And so students shared pictures through Google Drive. They had a folder that each day they would upload their pictures for the day into the folder, so that when they went to make their final claymation, they would have all the pictures they need. Students would have anywhere from tens to hundreds of pictures. When they put it in iMovie, each picture only lasts for about 0.3 of a second or so. So it goes by pretty quick. So it took us a lot of pictures in order to be able to make up like a 30-second clip. We used iMovie to drag in and add all the pictures to build their claymation. Basically, when they were making their pictures, they would just move the clay like a little bit each time, and kind of the more pictures they have, the smoother it turns out to be in the end. iMovie also has title cards and music that students can add to their work as well, so that makes it a little bit more fun for them. Basically, the way we did the claymation is that one person would make the claymation on their laptop using iMovie, but then via Zoom they could share their screen with their group members at home, and so then those group members could kind of give input into the process and help as needed when they needed it, as far as like anything with the program or give input to the songs or whatever it is that they might have went with.
So I think it's really important to note that, you know, he's doing this as he's synchronously teaching and the kids are collaborating. So even the kids at home are still working together in a collaborative way. So here are just a few videos that I'll share with you. Middle school fashion, we pose for the camera.
The end. So fun.
And as you can see, the students really added their own flair and their own touch to these videos, which is really cool. So these are just a few examples of the magic that happens at Ellsworth Middle School every day. So thank you for letting me share with you. These kids are awesome and they've done an amazing job with these projects, and the teachers are doing a great job facilitating student choice and really engaging students every day. Any questions?
Those are beautifully done.
But thank you so much.
Yeah.
What a
Thank
great.
you for your morning announcements too. If anybody hasn't seen that already, it's a great way. I do recommend parents log in to Facebook. She posts that, and it's a really great way for all middle school parents to see what our kids are engaging in and what's going on in the school every week. and it's very entertaining. Yes,
you can see me make a
wonderfully done.
fool of myself every Monday morning on Facebook.
You did great. You're not making a fool of yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other
And
questions?
Congratulations to Mrs. Anderson and Mr. Downs. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah,
That's very
fantastic.
exciting.
Yeah.
Good to
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erica.
Thanks, Erica.
Mrs. Clifford. The pass of the laptop.
Hold on, I need to just get my stuff up. I think I give me just a minute.
You're fine.
Miss Gabbianelli, I loved the selfies at the end of that.
Wasn't it great? My middle school kiddos.
Right? So fun.
So you have my report. I do want to mention as well as Ms. Gabinelli, Ellsworth Elementary Middle School has a nomination for Teacher of the Year as well, and it's Rochelle Brown, who is our 4th grade remote-only teacher. So I just wanted to share a couple of things with you. Kindergarten celebrated their 100 days of school. I was able to take some photos and create a little video that was posted, and I put a link in their report as well. Teachers really had a great time with that. In the 1st grade, although I didn't include any pictures, I used an app on their iPads to age themselves 100 years. So kids took selfies and then they aged themselves 100 years, and those are on the bulletin boards at school. They looked absolutely fabulous. Students had a really good time celebrating the 100 days of school. And Mr. Norwood, over the next 17th and 18th, they're doing the Kids Heart Challenge. This is something that we've presented, been a part of for 18 years. It used to be Jump Rope for Heart. They've transitioned the name. And the Ellsworth Elementary Middle School has participated this is our 18th year, and over those 18th year, we've raised $80,000 for the American Heart Association. And Mr. Norwood is still looking for, they call them ambassadors, to be able to share stories about heart and strokes. If you're interested in being a warrior, so they can share those stories with students and be able to be connected to the work they're doing, the fundraising and the jump roping. So if you're doing that, you're welcome to email Mr. Norwood at dnorwood@ellsworthschools.org, or if you can't remember, you're welcome to email me. So they are looking for some people to share some stories that will be shared with students as they're participating in the program. I also wanted to thank a couple of local businesses. We had a donation from TJ Maxx that included PPE, student masks, hand sanitizers, and hand wipes. And we received a $250 donation from Camden National Bank made on the behalf of Christina Beal. So we wanted to thank those businesses and Christina for supporting Ellsworth Elementary Middle School. And I just want to end with job openings. We still have educational technicians. We're looking for support personnel for our students, and a life skills teacher. Any questions?
April, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
So in your report you sent us, you had talked about remote support. Is this person providing social emotional check-ins with all kids, or just those identified as needing extra help?
So I think Mr. Higgins wanted me to wait and share that when we talk about those pieces, if that's okay?
Sure.
All right.
And kindergarten registration has
Been started. We already have 12 kids signed up for next year. It's absolutely fabulous. Everything is on the website. If you click on the news section at the elementary middle school, the process is completely online.
I attempted, and I was technologically challenged. And I was like, whatever, I'll go back to it later.
You're welcome to give me a call, and I can walk through that.
Okay.
So it's something we started before I had left IT, but they've got it refined and down to a science now. So everything can be uploaded from proof of residency to birth certificate, so everything's done online. But we've sent those out. We've done our communication. We've sent them to nursery schools and daycares, and we're looking to recruit. It's time to register for kindergarten.
If you don't see my daughter registered in like the next 2 months.
I'll come find you.
You know where to find me.
And you also can do it
one
by
Tuesday
hand too.
week.
There's ability to print forms, or we can send forms out to you if you don't want to utilize it through the online portal. There's still the option to do that. Any other questions for me? All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Bowles?
Good evening. I'm excited to report a lot of student news this month. But first, like Mr. Clifford, this is our recruiting time. So I spent last week at Sumner Memorial High School, and this week I have been at Bucksport High School, and we'll finish up there this week. And also been to MDI High School, recruiting and meeting with 9th and 10th graders to go over the application process for HCTC and for Bridge Academy. We are also, for the first time, our current 8th graders didn't get to experience middle school activities through CTE like they would have last spring or this year. So I'm going to offer a Zoom night this Thursday night for 8th grade families, parents, and students at 6:30 so that I can talk to 8th graders and their parents about what our school is, what programs do we offer, what do they need to think about as they register for classes with Mr. Clifford, and then we're going to have a second night for our surrounding town schools so that they can zoom in and get the information as well. We feel like it's really important that those kids get a chance to have that information because they haven't had the hands-on experiences. And our hope is that maybe we can do something in their 9th grade year if we're a little bit more back to normal next year at some point. I'm really excited to announce my biomedical teacher is always looking for opportunities for kids in the sciences to try to give them opportunities for scholarships or things to put on resumes or college applications that will differentiate them, because a lot of the programs that a lot of these kids want to go into in post-secondary are very competitive. So I'm really excited. She found, it's called Exploravision, and we had a team of 3 enter an Exploravision STEM essay contest. We still don't know how they did yet, but I've described in my report what they had to do. So for the people at home, I want to honor Ellsworth High School Bridge Academy student Lily Philbrook, Ellsworth High School Bridge Academy student Bryce Carter, and Sumner High School student Hannah Shorey for entering this as a team. Each team had to select a technology present in the home, school, or their society. They explored what the technology does, how it works, how, when, and why it was invented. They then had to project into the future what the technology could be like in 10 years and what kinds of scientific breakthroughs might occur to make what they would like it to look like. They ended up with a 11-page essay that explored the past, present, and future of human embalming. They designed a synthetic organism that converts embalming fluids, which currently as is poison the soil and water tables, into harmless products. They theorized that synthetic organisms will be used to solve many environmental issues in the future, including this specific issue. This is the first time we've entered this, so we're anxiously awaiting the email to find out how we did in the regional competition. But we're really proud of the 3 of them. This was not required as part of the course. This was something that they did above and beyond within the program with Sarah's support. Our diesel technology students today had the opportunity to Zoom with Bath Iron Works and learn about the variety of careers that they have through technology at Bath Iron Works. So our diesel students were excited about that. More and more, we're trying to bring businesses into our programs since we can't necessarily bring them out right now like we traditionally would. Also part of biomedical, we're really excited. Each year, we tend to have anywhere from 1 to 4 students be involved with the Jackson Lab scientist in a pretty intense internship opportunity. And because of the way things are, we really didn't think we would get any because they're not really doing that this year because of everything. But we are excited that one of our Bridge students that is from Bucksport High School but does Bridge Academy at Ellsworth High School, Emma Howard, has been accepted to do an internship with Jackson Lab remotely. This is a huge commitment by this scientist, so we're extremely appreciative that he's willing to do that. She's going to be working on a coding data analysis project with Vivek Kumar's lab. So we're always appreciative to Jackson Lab for continuing to partner with our biomedical program because it's a huge experience for these kids when they get to do that kind of work. Sarah Petroulis has also been busy because she is also our sponsor and kind of advisor of any kids in our school that are interested in the Cyber Start security competition that we've done the last 2 years. She kind of mentors them and does that. And we've had 7 students this year qualify for nationals through this, which is crazy. Because none of them are in a computer science program. So I want to announce GSA Junior Scotland Farmer, EHS Bridge Junior Amber Ray Pasek, Ellsworth High School Bridge Senior Lily Philbrook, Bucksport Bridge Junior Emma Howard, Deerell Stonington High School Bridge Senior Ariel Larrabee, Ellsworth High School Bridge Junior Josh Campbell and his twin Jessie have all made it to nationals. And in addition, we've been designated as a Silver Cyber Opportunity School nationally, so we're pretty proud of that. So thank you again to Sarah for giving kids all these extra opportunities through our school. I did give you a handout about an opportunity that EMCC provided for the first time this year. We were really excited. Ellsworth was selected at the high school and at HCTC. We were able to offer a 1-credit EMCC course, Intro to Radiography, which exposes students to the field of radiology and equipment safety. We have 2 students in our health occupations program that are taking advantage of this opportunity. They're doing the class virtually every Monday through EMCC. I attached the flyer for the course, so I want to give a shout out to Health Occupations Ellsworth High School Bridge student Abby Bland and Sumner High School Bridge student Lexi Coombs. So these 2 girls are already in health occupations. They're taking 4 college classes at Ellsworth High School through the Bridge Academy, and they've elected to 1 afternoon a week take this 1-credit college course on top of it. So they're taking certainly advantage of all opportunities that are given to them in the medical field. So we're really proud of them. Another health occupation student that I want to give a shout out to tonight is Camille Gray. She is a young lady who is in our health occupations program also as a junior. She's in the first year of the program, and she knew this was her path she wanted to do. So this summer, prior to coming to us, she got herself enrolled in the Northern Lights Summer Volunteer Program in Bangor. And she volunteered over 124 hours this summer at the hospital and did a variety of things, and she is quite enthusiastic to talk about it. If you ever want to talk to her about it, she will tell you all about it. And I put some of what she did in my report, but she did all kinds of things, transporting patients to and from vehicles, delivering meals to patients, visiting with patients. She did over 300 COVID testing kits herself, putting them together and making sure they were ready to go. And now what she's doing is she's now volunteering at the Cross Center, helping with COVID testing at the Cross Center. So she's transporting patients that have difficulty getting in and out of their vehicle. She's helping the nurses get them to and from so the nurses can focus on the vaccine, and she's assisting them. So we're really proud of her. And all of our students that know exactly what they want to do and kind of put the extra effort in to have good experiences. Finally, I'll talk a little bit more about this when we do our report on our hybrid schedule. But Brookside Restaurant last week did over 70 meals, and tomorrow we are at 90. So we are growing each week with how many curbside to go we're doing in an hour and 15 minutes. So it's crazy. But it's a great experience for them, and they have just their moods. It's amazing when they can start doing their live work, how that changes. So the culinary kids are really, attendance is going up. So we're really excited for them that they're getting this experience. So thank you for supporting that. So last plug, our 8th grade Ellsworth Parent Information Night for HCTC. Thursday, February 11th. That's not correct at all. That would be this Thursday, March 11th. And then Tuesday, March 16th, we're doing a Bridge Academy information session for all interested freshmen and sophomore families. We have representatives from Bridge Academy that will be coming, as well as myself and Mrs. High will be doing our annual presentation over Zoom rather than in person. And finally, the HCTC application deadline is Friday, March 26th. And that is also the deadline for Bridge Academy as well. Any questions?
Are all of those applications online as well?
Yes, they're posted on our website, they're posted on our Facebook page, and then we also, every high school has done a huge email blast. And if people or parents message me, I just send it to them again. because some parents are like, my child doesn't know where it is, so we just resend it. That happens a lot.
That's my kid.
Yeah.
On a kind of connected note, I was able to pick up lunch for myself and my kids last week from Brookside, and it was awesome. The kids loved
thank
it,
you.
and oh my goodness, it was a bad day to start a new diet with that strawberry shortcake because it was so good. But
Yes.
but they
Yeah.
really did a fantastic job, and really, plug is. For what you pay for it, you get a lot of food. You couldn't get that amount of food for that price and that quality at any restaurant. It's a really great experience for the kids.
Yeah, it's a great experience for the kids, and people are amazed at the amount of food. We participated in March Dine Around, so last week we did free dessert with your meal, and tomorrow it's Bill's famous chowder. So 90 people will get 90 cups of chowder tomorrow free with their meal. So it's going to be delish.
Yeah.
But
And
thank you.
It is really good. It was, like, my kids are not easy to please sometimes, and they all, I sent a picture to Liz, because they were all like, at the table, like, yes, this is a mistake.
Yeah, Liz probably loved it. No, so thank you. I appreciate
You
it.
want to
That's
tell
good
everybody
feedback
how
for
to
them.
sign up for that again,
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Is it?
Say that again.
Do you want to tell everybody how to sign up for that again?
Yes, so you can email econnors@ellsworthschools.org to get on the email list, or we are putting the link on our Facebook page every Friday morning-ish, and then you have until Tuesday at 11, and we close it. But it's first come, first served, so if we sell out of something, then it is what it is. But we were able to get lots of haddock for this week and chicken parm, so 90. I guess that's popular because 90 is a lot.
Absolutely. Excellent, thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Next, we should have Ann Sargent from Adult Education, and she is on the phone.
I believe
Correct.
she is. I saw her.
I did see it pop up.
Yeah.
There
we
she
go.
is.
Can you see me?
Yes.
I'm a little bit dark because I didn't think you'd be able to see me, so I'm not as set up as I could be, but
That's okay.
it's a pleasure to be here. I wish I could be there in person. I'm still very actively involved with troubleshooting online evening courses, so it's a challenge for me to get to the school board meetings. We have 3 courses tonight, so it's busy. I have some information about our hybrid classes, but I'll hold that until later in the agenda. Our Adult Ed Center space, for those of you who don't know, we're located now in the front of the Mill Mall, sort of between the high school, and perfectly placed between the high school and EEMS, but this time on the front of the mall. And we've had some challenges with getting the sign up, but we should, in the next 3 or 4 weeks, have the sign. And all of our walls are up, which we're excited about. They aren't all electrified yet, and they aren't painted, but we're making progress. And maybe later in the spring, we'll have a virtual tour to share with you. And I hope that sometime late August or early September, we can have kind of a grand opening of our space. We're looking forward to that. Just a note on online classes. Our enrichment classes are virtually all online. We do have a fruit tree pruning class that's going to happen outdoors at the Hancock Community Garden, with, of course, social distancing and masking. And we have a main driving dynamics course that will be in our location. But for the rest, they're all online classes. And I've been surveying the students, and everybody really likes, at least the people who are taking the online classes, 100% of them like having online classes. And 100% of them have been either they've met expectations or exceeded expectations. So we're pretty excited about that, and I don't see enrichment classes going away. They're here to stay, not exclusively. They won't replace face-to-face. It's hard to have a dance class online, but they will definitely be, we've had many more enrollments with online teaching than we did face-to-face, so that's an interesting thing. I also think it's playing an important role during this time for working people and for retired people during the time of COVID to address isolation. Almost all of our students that come to adult ed for academic or workforce training have severe anxiety or depression. And so we're really excited, Ellsworth Adult Ed staff, to bring Ellsworth together to address mental illness thanks to the Yellow Tulip Project. I encourage you all to look at that online. The whole school district is going to be, or at least the high school is going to be involved. And we're planning a Hope Day. May is Mental Health Awareness month, and so we're planning a health day, a Hope Day, and the idea of the Yellow Tulip is to smash the stigma of mental illness. So we're hoping to have a community-wide, to sort of spearhead a community-wide effort to smash the stigma of mental illness and promote the reality that hope does happen, because it's an issue, as we all know, all of the time, but particularly during this pandemic. If you'd like to get involved with that, you can you can find me at asargent@ellsworthschools.org. We also have an adult ed info at ellsworthschools.org. We just had our second planning meeting, community-wide planning meeting. So it's a great time to get more people involved. We're excited about that. A couple of other things I've reported in other meetings about our computer support services project. It's a micro-credential program in collaboration with the University of Maine system. 3 separate badges. If you participate in all of the pieces, you get up to 9 college credits. And we have currently about 10 students involved with the beginning phase of that program. We anticipate 4 to 6 will complete the program with a CompTIA A+ certification. And we just got news, it's so hot off the press, I don't have details. Just today I got off the phone with somebody from the university, but that program has been extended through December. So people who are interested in the field of IT, now is a good time to reach out to us. And finally, I'm working with a veteran health occupations instructor, Nancy Eaton, to build an online, live online CNA course, where the classroom time and some of the lab will be online, and then in-person clinicals. As you may or may not know, that there is a governor's order that will allow flexibility in that, but it doesn't, if students aren't allowed to go into school, into facilities, it looks like we're heading in the opposite direction. We can all hope and pray that is true. But if not, and if people are interested in that other option, I can explain it. But so that's kind of exciting to be working on that. And if this goes well, Nancy is willing to work with me on a personal support specialist program that we'll offer in the summer. So lots of things going on. Those are just a few of them.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Just out of curiosity, I was wondering, what would you say are your most popular classes right now?
In terms of enrichment?
Or enrollment, or?
Yeah, so language classes, more than 20 people in the French class.
Nice.
Interestingly, beekeeping.
Wow.
Has a waiting list. We had a class in called Coastal Wildlife. It's just a 3-session sort of lecture series on coastal wildlife. Had to close that, had a waiting list. And then 3-session workshops on growing fruit trees.
Wow.
So those are our banner courses. Yeah.
So when is the
It's really fun. It's really fun. You never know what's going to run. It's really kind of fascinating. Yeah.
Well, I think you made a wonderful point about this being a way for people who really experience a lot of COVID blues right now and a lot of loneliness to reach out and be engaged in something new and exciting. When is your next sign up for classes? Just for the general public to know.
Yeah, so we have basically two semesters, a fall semester and a spring semester. So the next, we have classes that are continuing through the spring. Mm-hmm. We might have a couple of classes during the summer, but we don't really have the staffing to support that in the summer. So it's really in the fall. Okay. Our catalog will be set. Our catalog generally hits the pavement and online just before Labor Day.
Okay, good to know.
We're looking for course ideas though. So if you want to teach a class or if you want to learn something, now's the time to reach out to me.
Is sarcasm a class? I mean, do you want it to be?
Yeah, that's a class I might be able to teach. I try not to use it, but apparently, according to some of my close friends and family, I'm quite adept at it. I don't use it in my professional life, and I certainly wouldn't, as an educational leader, want to teach it.
Thank you so much, Annie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Annie.
Yeah. Take care.
You too. Thanks. I believe we have Rachel.
I believe Rachel is with us.
Okay. There we go.
There she is.
Great. It's like just pops up.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. So, for our ESSER 2 grant highlights, before formal planning of our Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund 2 grant, I sent out an email on Monday, March 1st to all of our Ellsworth teachers, guidance counselors, and social workers, informing them that they would be able to clock in for an additional 4 hours per week for planning for remote teaching. The leadership team knows that teachers are going above and beyond to meet students' needs at home and at school, and wanted to compensate them for these activities within the guidelines of the grant. We'll now begin the process of reaching out to representatives of the teaching staff and the community for further planning, as we said we would, on how to spend the remaining grant funds. We had talked about doing this a month ago at our previous meeting, and in that time, the reason we haven't reached out previously is because we have been spending down the previous grants. A lot of the things we had been ordering are still coming in. And so we've been trying to kind of reconciling those grants and making sure that those have been reconciled and spent down. And so now we're able to start planning on this next grant. So if you haven't been reached out to yet, it is not because we have planned those funds. It is simply because we are starting that process now. And finally, since our last board meeting, the team working on the McKinney-Vento grant of $5,000 that I've discussed before has finally finalized the contract with one of our behavioral health agencies so that students without stable housing will start receiving counseling services. This grant process and working group around the grant has been extremely successful, and I hope has been an example of how we can think about moving forward with other ideas that teachers and practitioners have for supporting students. And I'd like to use it as a model. I spent a lot of this past year writing grants and using grant funds to support the schools. And I'd like, if members of the community or the staff who are listening hear about grants for which our school district may qualify, or if they have ideas that may fit grants that they hear about, please forward them to me or call me to discuss them at rcormanramos at ellsworthschools.org. It's got some tricky spelling in there, so feel free to go to our website and find me on our webpage and send me the links, and we can collaborate on ways to support our students. I'm working on lots of different little things, but those are the big headlines, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Rachel, I have a question. So this ESSER2 grant, what are the limitations with this one? What type of items are we able to purchase with that money?
The same types of things that the other grants covered. They are the types of things, they include PPE, they include things that support our students, that support our staff, that maintenance, transportation, that are as a result of the COVID-19 and the pandemic. So things that will support our students and staff as a result of the pandemic. So if you have something particular in mind, I can address that in particular.
No.
They tend to be the same types of things.
Okay.
We're hoping to move away from things so much, because I think we bought a lot of support items like the technology and that type of thing, and hope to get more services like we talked about as the question came up about programming and support services for students, and summer school and tutoring and people investing in our faculty and staff and that kind of thing.
Okay. And does this one have an expiration date like the others have? A spending, the date where we have to spend it by?
No, fortunately, as the last one where it had this immediate December 30th, it is like 2 years out as opposed to a 6 months emergency. So they have figured out that is not the most moderate way for us to plan.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much.
Can I ask, do we have air filters in every room? Specifically, do we have UVC light air filters in our classrooms?
In each classroom, well, I know that we have upgraded the filters in the buildings. I think Mr. Higgins has a better knowledge of the exact types of filters, and certainly Mr. Turnbull can answer that. I'm not sure that he's here this evening, but we did upgrade the filters to have more use, because we got different kinds of filters that could take like 24-hour filtering. And so we did invest in quite a bit of our original funding into that, because the funding were on a different kind of cycle, because it wasn't as necessary to filter the air as often. And so we did upgrade our filters. I don't know in particular the type of filter you're referring to. That's not my wheelhouse, but I do know that we got a different set of filters that would make more regular filtering for what we needed.
Any other questions for Rachel? No. All right. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Move on to the superintendent's report.
I think it's September 2023 is the deadline for the ESSER2 funds. So that was a welcomed piece, rather than trying to spend it all within a 3-month period.
Right.
With that being said, with my report tonight, I want to try to focus on some things that are of a positive vein, and some of these will spill over into the second item on our agenda. I want to talk a little bit about school staff vaccination. As you all know, if you've been following the news, it's been a whirlwind over the past 3 weeks with regard to school staff vaccination. But I'm pleased to report that since the announcement of the dedicated educator-only clinics based upon the state's age-based program, one of them is dedicated directly to our school staff who are between 60 and 69 years of age. And the other one is through the federal retail pharmacy program, which accepts educators of all ages. Just a quick update. With regard to the staff-only clinic for ages 60 to 69, we've received, since Friday afternoon at 4:30, 3 emergency notifications that we needed to send out. And I hope Laura Johns is listening, because before I closed my computer down before the meeting started, we got one more. So I'm not sure what that is. But we've gotten information out to all of our staff in the NEO database, grades ages 60 to 69, with a specific link to sign up for a clinic that will take place this Friday. So that is great news. One of the things that we've learned, we asked people through that communication to let us know if they were able to sign up or if they had another appointment. Many of our staff have been right on top of it. They didn't need to take advantage of this particular program because they were able to get into the retail pharmacy program. So fairly good numbers of our staff members in the age 60 to 69 group are signed up for vaccinations. Some of them have already received their first shot, so that's great news. The federal retail pharmacy program is producing a little bit of frustration, as our staff members who I've communicated with have said, I get on several times a day and I find out there's no appointment, but many of them continue to try. We keep hearing little bits of hints from other people on what's the best time of day for which particular pharmacy, and I see some of our teachers here nodding tonight. Lindsay, you probably have some good tips for people if you want to share them.
Midnight at Walmart.
Midnight at Walmart, we heard. But people are really doing a great job, and I think the effort is there to get all of our school staff vaccinated as soon as possible, which to me is positive news. And certainly there's frustration out there with trying to get in, but staff are staying on top of it. So that is a positive. The other piece that I think is very much a positive, on March 3rd, the Maine Department of Ed distributed updated tentative guidance for graduation and other end-of-school year celebratory ceremonies. Some of them, I believe, are tied into the governor's recent announcement on expanding the gathering areas indoors and outdoors. Certainly outdoors is much easier. We haven't heard anything that's confirmed with regard to indoor activities and those expansion of gathering areas. But it's welcome news. Our school staff have it, and they've already begun looking at the guidance as they start planning for the end-of-year ceremonies. So to me, that's fantastic news. You know, last year it ended up working out well for both the middle school and the high school and HCTC for their ceremonies. We expect something to be much larger. If trends continue the way they are, it'll certainly be a much larger, much more participatory set of events this year. The other piece that we're expecting to receive, and we were hoping to have it before tonight, is the guidance from the Maine Principals Association regarding the spring sports season. And I think if you look at the fall sports season, both at the middle school level and the high school level, and the winter sports season, they've gone pretty well. People have done a great job following the guidelines and the guidance and respecting what we're being told that we need to do. Have not been reports of cases, so that's great news. I expect that the spring season is going to be very much the same, and with the expanded gathering limits, hopefully we'll be able to have more of our parents being able to attend their kids' games. So, to me, that's a couple of very positive pieces of information. As you heard mentioned by Mrs. Clifford, we still have some vacancies that we're trying to fill, a 5 through 8 resource room teacher. I know we have a teacher here in attendance tonight who's hoping that will get filled sooner rather than later. Thank you. Technology integration teacher, ed techs at HCTC and EES, administrative assistant to the special ed director, and one that I want to make a special notice of. We've reposted this again, a science teacher long-term sub at Ellsworth High School, and it's included in the ad, but I also want to mention it publicly. We're also willing to consider candidates who have the proper credentials to work virtually with our science students. So if you're interested in that, or if you have any interest in that, you can contact Dan Clifford at the high school for more information at 667-4722, or dclifford@ellsworthschools.org. And you can also find that on servingschools.com. Mentioned the letters of resignation and retirement. We had 2 resignations. Linda Van Salisbury, grade 2 teacher at EMS, has decided not to return at the end of this year. Courtney Willie, ed tech at EES, is resigning to take another employment opportunity. And 3 retirements. Joyce White, longtime ed tech at EEMS, is retiring after 32 years. Certainly we'll miss her and the service she's provided to kids and staff over the years. Lori Davis, grade 7 at EMS, retiring after 30 years in education. Similar to Joyce, another staff member who's done a great job with kids over the years. And for the second time, Doug Libby, you know, he retired a couple of years ago, and we just haven't been able to get rid of him. I hope you're watching, Doug, to hear me say that. Retired as a teacher a few years back, but has continued on as a girls basketball coach at EMS, and I think you've all seen his letter. He said all good things must come to an end, and unfortunately he's right, but certainly Doug has served our community very well, not only as a teacher but also as a coach. So we wish our staff members who are departing well, and wish our staff members going into retirement the very best in retirement.
question, do we know if we have staff that are above 69 who are seeking to get vaccinated who have not been able to?
I don't have the answer to that. I do know, one question we asked was, would staff in that age category be eligible for the 60 to 69? And I was told no. So we were not able to provide the link to them. And again, the reason for that, is my understanding, is the number of doses that were provided to the local clinic were based upon the number of staff members we had by date of birth in the NEO staffing system through the Department of Ed.
Right, but that is assuming that those people were already taken care of. Because they should have been, essentially the state gave whoever their primary care, umbrella outfit, that the state gave them vaccines for those people. If our teachers have not been able to get vaccinated, that's a problem. We need, and it's something that we do need a figure on, because there is a matter of compliance here that needs to be double checked up on. Not compliance with the school, but with other things.
Right. The one thing that we did do, Abby, is and again, it was a whirlwind of communications over the weekend. Yeah. We were awaiting, I'll make this very quick, we were awaiting information on the age 60 to 69 clinic late Thursday night, Friday morning, and it did not come. As a result, we sent a communication out to all ESD staff for the retail pharmacy program. That included the people in the age 70 to 79. So they did receive that information. I do know that some people in that category, I don't have the numbers with me, some people have already been signed up and have started the process, so that's great news. After we sent that out at 3:30 in the afternoon on Friday, we did get an email from the Department of Ed at 4:30 with the school staff only clinic. So I sent 74 emails out Friday night. But it was well worth it.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of other communications, so we're getting the information out as fast as we get it.
Oh, I know.
And we'll continue to do so. Like I say, I've got something that I'm going to check as soon as this meeting's over to see what I've got,
Right.
and we'll make sure that gets out to you.
Could we just put something out there to say, if you're in that category of above 69 in your school staff and you have not been able to get a vaccination appointment, can you please let us know? Because we'd like that number.
Yep.
And we can follow up. That'd be great. All right. Any other questions for Dan currently? All right, we're going to move on to item H then, committee reports. I have several. So if anybody else would like to start, is there any other reports? Because I don't want to take the whole time. Nope.
You've got the floor, Jen.
Okay. All right. Finance Committee met on February 17th at noon. We did an overview of the initial categories of the income and expense columns and discussed the anticipated needs. We also prepared at that time for a public forum that was held that night. That was kind of collaboration with the City Council. It was their idea to have an informational night that would inform the city taxpayers on the budget process for the city and the school department. So Dan presented, and so did Chief/Town Manager Glenn Mosier. And then there was an opportunity just for kind of a question and answer, and if anybody is interested in that, which I think everybody should definitely get involved and understand the process between these things, that can be viewed on the city's YouTube channel, and that should be up. Let's see. Dropout Prevention Committee met on February 22nd at 6 p.m. The continued efforts of this group include discussing many ways to meet students' needs. Much of that is social and emotional, but it's also academic struggles and attendance. Recently, Ellsworth High School has brought back a peer tutoring program for students. So that was really encouraging to hear. I think sometimes it's easier for students to reach out to their own peers than to adults for help. And so if there's any students who would like help with just homework help or studying for tests, they can reach out to their counselor, school counselor. We also discussed the project that Annie actually touched on, the Yellow Tulip project. So I'm hoping that the board will hear more about this coming in the spring. But that, she mentioned, it does symbolize hope, and the emphasis of the program is to break down the stigma surrounding mental health issues. Annie brought this to the group. She's a member of our dropout prevention group, and the high school is very excited to explore this project. There's actually an enrichment session on Friday that the students can attend that will give more information on that. So, HCTC Advisory Committee met on February 11th. Amy covered greatly tonight, but also the plans for the visits to the schools and what programs can begin their live work. And then also February 26th, as she mentioned in her report, she held a meeting that was for principals and school guidance counselors and the school board representatives. And that was basically talking about the informational nights and her visits that will be going on for recruiting. I think that's it for now. The rest will come later.
Did you have an appointment you were going to make?
Yes, I could do that now. The legislative liaison.
Yep.
Okay. We've got a few different things that are going to happen this evening, so I need to get down through a list of these. It was a mistake on my part to not have designated the legislative liaison back when we did the committee assignments. So I need to do that tonight as well, and I would like to continue with Paul as the legislative liaison. I have other assignments coming up this evening, and I would like to disperse them. So if you would accept that.
I accept.
We will continue on. I think that is it for committee reports, if nobody else has any right now.
Other than to say that there will be a number of them coming up. As the Finance Committee members know, I asked the two of you for some dates
Yes.
for next week. Also, the Personnel Committee, we have one scheduled for, I believe it's March 25th. And we'll be scheduling one before that. That will be the first, that's actually our first meeting with one of the groups we'll be bargaining this spring, first of 3 groups. So there will be plenty of meetings to report on in subsequent board meetings.
All right. Item I, any old business? I don't believe so. Item J, new business, and item number 1, update on the hybrid model instructional programs. And before we do that, Beth, I wanted to check in. Was there any public comment yet?
I did get a question that was from Katie Ray. Just wondering if you could clarify if kids in middle school and high school have to be remote on their designated in-school days, if they are still counted as absent regardless of if they attend via Zoom. We are finding that even though our children are home and on Zoom, they are counted as absent, and if their connection is dropped, teachers are also counting them as absent. So I think that's probably in reference to if they're sent home on a quarantine or something and they're on via Zoom. She's wondering if they're counted as absent.
Good question.
Because she seems to see that as a trend for her kids.
Yeah, I would think that if students are participating through Zoom, they would be counted as present.
I would assume so as well.
I would suggest if there are issues with her kids, have her contact the school.
I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, I'll message her back
Yeah,
and tell her to
They
reach out
should be counted as
to.
present, you know, they're even though they're on their remote
yeah.
day, they're participating, so
Yeah.
they're the only way that they can be on that day.
Right? When you don't have any other choice. And let me just double check. I think that was the only one that I had at this point, but let me just, yep, that's it for now.
I have something to ask about that, just on behalf of parents. Can you quickly just explain for everybody listening at home how a parent can possibly go online and check their students' attendance?
Okay. I'm going to defer to one of our principals. I don't go and check. I know how I can do it through Infinite Campus.
Right.
I think they can do it on Infinite Campus. They have an Infinite Campus login, and they should be able to log in and check that attendance that way.
That's how it used to be.
Well, she's coming. It always
I can
used to
say.
be, I believe it's still the same. People are given a login for it, and you can go on and check
Yeah.
that behavior,
Yeah,
attendance.
I think they can log right onto their Infinite Campus logon, and they can see the attendance that way.
So we kind of should encourage parents to be checking that periodically And if there's a discrepancy, to reach out. Should they reach out to this teacher first before the principal if there's a discrepancy in the absenteeism?
Yeah, you can reach out to your teacher first. I know that at the middle school we had some technical glitches that we're still correcting. So we're still in the process of doing that and starting to schedule those truancy meetings now. So it's part of my
the next piece.
It's part of the next piece, but yeah, that absolutely they can contact the teacher, they can contact myself or Mr. Wood, and we can work through that. Because what we found was that students weren't logging on to the virtual attendance, but they were still present. So we're trying to kind of correct
figure
some
out
of
which
those
days.
mistakes.
Yeah. Good.
And
Thank
same
you.
thing with the high school too. Parents should periodically check their own students' attendance, and they do so through Infinite Campus.
Yep.
Excellent.
Thank you, Abby. All right, update on hybrid instructional programs. Mr. Clifford, do you want to go first?
Well, Mr. Cliff is coming up. Just a reminder, this has been an item that's been on the agenda every month since January. Just an update from our principals on how things are going from one month to the next. So
Yeah.
gave Mr. Clifford just the perfect amount of time to get to the podium.
That's right. First of all, the others added to their principals report, and I don't want to forget my teachers that were nominated for
yes.
County Teacher of the Year, but we had 6 at the high school. We have Stephanie Magruder, Jessie Falabella, Carrie Cudney, Heidi Omler, Ethan Linders, and Jamie Calandro. So
Excellent.
Good luck to all of them, and
Great.
congratulations.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So, monthly update with the hybrid. So, first of all, we're halfway through our third quarter, believe it or not. And what I did was I took our grade breakdown from the first quarter to the second quarter, and I have those tonight. As you remember, the first quarter was high, and second quarter is lower by percentage points of 2 to 3%, which is in the right direction, but not where we want to be. When the second quarter was close to ending, we changed the Friday days to the new schedule, so we were in those Fridays just twice before the second quarter ended. So we're hoping that throughout the third quarter, with these new Fridays and having focused learning and time for students to reassess, it'll be lower and lower. So yeah.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, Dan? I know when you reported on the failure percentages at a previous meeting, you referenced the figure 20%. I just want to make sure that's understood. That represents 20% of our students failed one class or more?
Yes.
And it did not mean that 20% of our students were failing completely out of school, right? One class or more?
Yeah.
Okay, so the percentage points have reduced from that, and that's the number of students who are failing one course or more?
Yep.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Yep. Yep, so hopefully as the year progresses, we'll see that dip down, to below 10% at least by the end of the year. We're looking forward to that. And another thing that you wanted me to include are just some of the enrichment seminars information and some of the topics that we've covered so far. They've gone really well, and I want to thank the community, the universities in the area for Zooming in with our students, and they've been terrific educationally, and I feel like our students have really gotten a lot out of them. And it's Monday morning we meet and plan them for the next couple weeks is what we try to do. And then teachers and guidance counselors, myself, Mrs. Wright, Mrs. Hessler, just make contacts and see if people are interested. And nobody has said no yet. So we've been really fortunate as far as that goes, and they've been really good. But some of the topics that we've hit on so far is the Social Dilemma documentary. So you want to be a healthcare worker. Dr. Hasham's webinar, research scientist from Jackson Lab, the career of engineering, UMaine Dean. How much does college really cost? Outside exercise training, resiliency training, painting workshops, pinch pots for giving, roundtables discussion. One of them was who should get the COVID vaccine. College of Mission counselors from Colby College, UMaine Husson, KVCC, and UMaine Augusta. And then we had strategy games, how to play cribbage, pickleball, table tennis, archery. This Friday we have Shinna Bellows coming, which we're really excited about. And Yellow Tulip Project, Breaking Stereotypes. It's it's a series that is coming to us, and Friday's the first of that series, and How to Paint Murals. So we had a wide range. We feel like we're hitting a lot of interest of the students, and they've gone really well. As far as the hybrid scheduling and days, they're going really well. And attendance is, better than it was, and I think we'll see that more and more in the spring. But yeah, no, so far so good. It's going well and it's improving for sure. Yeah.
Just a question, Dan, with the change to Fridays, and you talked about part of the need was to give students who were struggling and challenging an opportunity to get tagged or be tagged by a teacher or tag a teacher for help. And you mentioned the number of tags from at our last meeting,
yeah.
Pretty high number.
Yeah.
With the reduction, percentage points, 1, 2, or 3, whatever it is, in the number of failures, can you attribute that to the number of students who are being tagged and taking advantage of that opportunity on Fridays?
Yeah, absolutely. They're right around 600 every single Friday, 600 tags for the 3 sessions, which is really high. But yeah, it's just that time to reassess and have the small group meetings with teachers and one-on-one with teachers, and that's been really crucial, for sure.
Nope, I think everyone needs to go. Go ahead, Beth.
I was just going to say I had the opportunity to be a part of the engineering with the UMaine Dean of Engineering School, and it was actually, I found it really interesting. I'm an adult that's has never had any interest in that field other than, they're really great at what they do. And I found it to be very interesting and educational, and all the students really appeared to be engaged and listening. And I also thought it was really great that the instructor mentioned that the kids who are in that are interested in that field. So it's like even more beneficial for them because this is what they want to do. So I thought that was really awesome as an adult, that I was like, this is really great. And I thought, what other enrichment classes can I go to?
Yeah. we have a follow-up on that one on Friday. That dean has handpicked some students, and so there's going to be a Q&A.
Yes, he had mentioned that.
And that's this Friday too for students. Yeah.
Awesome.
That was a good one.
I got to attend one as well about cybersecurity and how these companies harvest our information without our knowledge, or most people, and what your footprint is, and it was so impactful and it was so educational. I feel like not only do I wish every high schooler got to absorb that information, but it should almost be offered in adult ed too, because there's not a person that doesn't hit, and so much of that information is somewhat hidden. But it was one of the most educational couple hours of school I have seen. and what I also loved is that it gave us a chance as board members to see the technology at work, how kids are zooming in, how kids in the classrooms are using the technology, how synchronized it was, and the technology was working, absolutely beautiful. But it was, and once again, I also found the kids very engaged, and this was important because it was asked of me as a board member, is this what our kids should be doing right now? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Sorry.
And we're really happy with the tagging, obviously, but there are some sessions like those two, that we had more kids involved, but I mean they're where they should be. They should be with their teachers and reassessing and things like that. But there's some great seminars that some were missing out on. Yeah.
I just wanted to note how I noticed that the failure rate among the freshmen was the lowest. And that's such a huge transition for them to come from the middle school to the high school, and just huge kudos to the freshman team.
Yeah.
I think that
Thank
speaks
you.
volumes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dan, I have a question. The topics of, the enrichment topics that you provided, how are those determined? Is it student-led? Do you have a survey? Do you ask all the students what they're interested in?
So we haven't surveyed the students yet because we have so many topics at our disposal right now. And really what we're going off of, so during the course of a year, with the exception of some of these, this is what they're getting, through the course of the year, through guidance or through if we had regular classes and things like that. So we're trying to grab those first. So what are these seniors, what are these juniors missing? And that's with the college counselors and things like that. So we're trying to do those first. And then, when we get in further into the spring and we're struggling a little bit for topics, I don't know when that will be, but if we are, then we'll definitely, and we have verbal feedback from the students, about that, but I haven't officially surveyed them to see what topics that they want to have.
So the roundtable discussions, can you give us an idea of how that works? Is it a discussion where it's a back and forth on a topic? Because, I noticed the roundtable discussions tend to. We've had a roundtable on gun control, one on abortion rights, and I'm wondering, are there opportunities, or, is this in a debate form? Is it just on a certain topic? Are there students who feel like they maybe would engage in a roundtable if it was pro-life or a Second Amendment, or?
Yeah.
I'm just curious how we're coming up with those discussions.
So Mrs. Cuddy comes up with these, and she's our gifted and talented teacher, and it comes from the gifted and talented group. That's where the topics, a lot of them come from. And so it's kind of a debate, but it's not, sit over here if you are this, sit over there. It automatically becomes a debate because not everybody's going to agree. And Mrs. Hessler and Mrs. Cudney, they facilitate the conversation, and they do a really good job of it. And so everybody's heard, everybody's heard. They just have to wait their turn. And there's, no right answer at the end or anything like that. I'm trying to think of the first one was the vaccine that I sat in on. And one student had a totally different view of it than the other students. And I was amazed how respectful they were. And a few of them said that, I really appreciate your opinion, and I really haven't thought of it or heard of it. I disagree with you, but I understand why you're saying what you're saying, and I appreciate it. That was said to the person a couple times. So it's kind of a debate format, but it's facilitated very well by those two. And and teachers get zoom in also and give their opinion, and but yeah, it's a conversation, more than anything.
That's what I was just curious about.
Yeah.
It seemed, just keeping things, so that there's an opportunity for students, that maybe don't,
Right.
align with some of these, that they do have the opportunity to go in and have a conversation.
Absolutely. Yep. And Mrs. Cudney, if there's any dead time, both of them, they have some questions, in advance, and she'll ask them. But yeah.
Thank you.
And did you say that Mrs. Cudney's gifted and talented students help generate the topics? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, they did. And a lot of them participate in these that we're talking about. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything
That's
else
all I
on the
have.
update?
Thank you.
You good?
Very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm happy to report that in the last couple of weeks, we brought more fully remote students back, and I continue to see that trending. I'm anticipating at least another 4 returning potentially in the next few weeks. There are some people who have high-risk people at home that they're waiting for those people to get the vaccine, and then they're going to send their children back. So that's really exciting. I have 15 fully remote at 5th grade, 13 at 6th grade, 9 at 7th, and 6 at 8th, for a total of only 43, which is fantastic news. Our after-school program is going really well. We have a lot of kids taking advantage of that and staying with teachers, and it's just building their confidence. It's allowing us to do some RTI, building some of those skills, and making sure that they're able to stay caught up and that they can do that at school, because we're still seeing that kids are really struggling with school being at home. So that's good. Over February break, I met with Linda Fuller from the College of the Atlantic, and there may be some opportunity for us to collaborate with them and get some tutoring services from the college students. So I'm exploring those options with Linda, and Mrs. Richards is going to be helping facilitate that with me. So I'm waiting kind of to see who's available from the College of the Atlantic and how we can set up that program. But they have a work-study program, and that would be very beneficial for them to work with some of our fully remote kids, especially our fully remote 8th graders who are struggling a little bit right now. So that's kind of the plan that I'm working on currently. The challenges still remain the same, I think. Fully remote kiddos are having a little bit more of a struggle. It's still hard for kids to always engage, but we have seen attendance on the remote days increase and the engagement increase from the synchronous teaching. So that's a step in the right direction. Currently, right now, I have 161 kids on maroon days and 147 on gray days. So that's kind of where we are right now, and we are trying to keep kids engaged, doing fun things. We just issued a challenge for middle level education month per grade level, so it's kind of like a competition, and there's different missions. We're using an app called Goose Chase. So teachers are going to collaboratively work together and bring the grade levels together and take pictures, and there's different missions that I put on there that talk about middle school and what it means to be a middle school student. So just continuing to find those ways to stay engaged and keep kids engaged, and the different things that we can do to help. So, and social and emotional well-being continues to be concerned, but Stacy and Brenda are really working diligently and collaboratively with April and I to make sure that we're on top of the things that are going on with kiddos and families. So,
Erica, I have a question. Is attendance taken for every period? So for kids that are remote, they Zoom in, and is attendance taken for each of those periods, or no?
It's not taken for every period. It's just taken for the day for the homeroom teacher. But what happens is the teachers collaborate throughout the day. So, for example, if a kiddo comes in tardy and is at, I'm just going to use Mrs. Jesser or Mr. Ford. So if kid misses Mrs. Jesser's class first thing in the morning, but is in Mr. Ford's class to participate, and they were tardy for whatever reason, then we just mark them tardy. Okay. They still get credit, but they're collaborating, and we're leaving the attendance open so teachers can go back in and change that at the end of the day. So.
I have a question as well.
Sure.
So what, and this may be for kind of all, what would it look like in terms of spacing and capacity if all of the remote students came back?
Hybrid. If we brought all of the remote students back in the hybrid system, then I think we could fit them in on the different days. We're not quite at capacity on some days and some grade levels, and it depends. Like, there are some classrooms in certain grade levels where I'm at capacity in just those classrooms, but I have room in the other classrooms. So it might mean that they have to change the homeroom where they were originally in, or we have to do something, but we could work it out so that we could make sure that they fit on the cohort days.
And I'm assuming, Mr. Clifford, that would be a similar type thing in the high school. I was just curious because it would be really fantastic if the fully remote students all came back, and as more people get vaccinated, we're going to see that number increase. So I was just curious as to how that would look with compliance.
And my hope in the next couple weeks is that I can bring the majority of the fully remote kiddos back and really get them into that structured. The kids who have come back from fully remote are really thriving, and I think they're happy to be back. And these are kids who had been fully remote all year long, and they're just now coming back. So I think they're welcoming that change and welcoming being in the building and interacting with their peers and things like that. I mean, we're really trying creative ways, like you saw tonight in our presentation, to engage kids synchronously. But it's still really hard when you're on a screen and kids are in the classroom to really connect sometimes. So, but yeah, it would be great if we could get the rest of the 43 back. That's my goal.
Can you tell me your, oops, I'm sorry, Abby. No. Can you say the maroon number again?
Sure, it was 161.
Thank you.
And 147?
147, yep. Any other questions? Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Not just for you, but in general. So have we asked for, I'm just thinking about the remainder of the year, is there a commitment that parents are making from this point forward that if you're remote, you're going to remain remote? Or when does that happen? Or are we going to make that happen?
So if I'm a family that wants to come back from a remote, I'm committing to be there the rest of the year.
Yeah.
We have not issued that because there are so many factors. Erica mentioned one, and they've got a family member at home that's in a high-risk category. If we see cases start to spike and people want to make that decision for their own family safety, we're going to allow that.
Yeah.
So no, there's no prohibition on that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that we have 112 remote-only kids, and we could fit them all into the school.
That's at the high school.
At the high school, yes.
Well, and at the middle school,
But-
you've got the same thing. You've got 43 students who are fully remote. When you look at the capacity based upon, and again, this is kind of going into the next agenda item,
Yeah.
but
Okay,
you look
okay,
at the.
I can wait.
No, but listen, let me finish it because I'm on a roll.
Okay, go ahead.
It doesn't happen very often, so. But when you look at the capacity that we have based upon the current health and safety requirements, we certainly could accommodate all of the students who are fully remote at EEMS.
Mhm.
At the high school, I'd have to go back and look at what Dan said for
Our capacity is 258.
258 with that spacing, so you'd be pretty close to be able to get most of those kids back.
Yeah.
I think the challenge comes, and we'll talk about this a little bit, the challenge comes in the specific classes.
Yeah.
Right.
As you go up through your grade spans, it becomes more difficult. Students at the high school change classes every period, so.
Yeah.
but-
Thank you, Erica.
You're
Sorry.
welcome. No problem.
Go down the
Thank
rabbit
you.
hole.
Anybody, any other questions?
Nope,
Okay.
we're good. Thank you. Mrs. Clifford?
Kelly, if you don't mind if I address that question too. I think one of the things that we still have to consider is that there's some students that are really thriving in that remote environment. And I think that we're talking about the negative impacts of that. Some are not of attendance, lack of engagement, but I've got emails from parents talking about how well their students are thriving in that environment. So I don't want to lose that perspective as well as we're talking about bringing kids back.
Yeah.
In April, can I just add
yeah.
one other thing, just to follow up on that point quickly? It's a conversation we started for next year because even though we're all expecting and hoping that we're going to be 5-person in day, there are some kids at all of our levels that are absolutely thriving in a remote environment. And I think it's our duty as a school system and as people who care about kids, if we can support kids with that type of an opportunity. We've expended a lot of funds on technology, on the things that make it necessary. We should take advantage of it. So
Absolutely.
it's a conversation we've just started. But thank you, April.
Sure. So one of the things that I focused on for this month's report is some of the supports that we're putting in place for children. So students received their first report card for us in mid-March. We do a parent-teacher conference. We do a formal report card. We do a second parent-teacher conference at the K-4 level, and then they get a final report card. So it's 2 report cards and 2 parent-teacher conferences. And so after the first parent-teacher conference, we talked about some of our students that were really struggling on the remote days. So teachers have been reaching out and parents have been reaching out about how we can support them. So there's a couple of things that we've put in place, adjust in place. So we are starting tutoring next week. We went by teacher recommendation. So all of our K-4 teachers recommended 91 students at the K-4 level for tutoring. We have 13 tutors. It's been updated since this was sent to you. We have 13 tutors that are interested. Those are ESD staff members. They're certified teachers and ed techs that currently work in our building. Not all are on the K-4 side, but they all work at the K-8 building. Tutors are building their schedules this upcoming week. They're doing and working in groups of 1-on-1 to 2-on-1s to 3-on-1s so that they're grouping kids together in grade level or by skill level. Tutoring is going to begin the week of the March 15th. We're going to board our buses that we're using for after school. We're going to fill out the spreadsheet, make sure everyone gets where they need to go, and then other students will be picked up. And as of today, we have 38 students who have signed up for tutoring. So one of the things I think that shows this, to have 13 staff members who are willing to stay after school and work with tutors, I think really shows how much our ed techs and our teachers really care about our students, and I think it shows the level of concern that we have at the K-4 level about academic growth and progression. So I just want to thank them for that. It's pretty amazing. We offer the tutoring services K-4. Usually they don't include K in some of their offerings, but we felt that it was important to do that. So I'm really proud of that, and I'm really proud of all the parents and the response we've had to tutoring. We've never had 38 before, so we're really proud of that work. We have a remote support specialist who just started this week. She is working through the teacher recommended tutoring list for students who do not accept tutoring or decline that service, so that we could provide them some academic support on remote days. So the vision for this position is that this person is working on site and she's collaborating with classroom teachers and working with students on their remote days. So part of that position would be helping them do their remote work that teachers have assigned, whether that's through Seesaw and building foundational skills so that they're able to do that work. In addition, I did include social emotional check-ins, and I want to be clear that this person is not a healthcare professional. She's not a mental health professional. She's a certified teacher. And with the mental health check-ins, I'm talking about social lunches, having lunch with kids, connecting kids for a social hour, doing something of those sorts. Those types of check-ins, not mental health check-ins. I wanted to be clear about that. I didn't want to misconstrue that position. But it's about creating a sense of community and keeping our K-4 kids really still connected to school. So that's really the goal. I know a lot of them are feeling isolated and not having that established routine of this every other day, and sleep patterns are off, and all those conversations we've been having with parents. I just think having this person will help us do that. And we went off the teacher recommendation list for tutoring, and then we started with people who had declined the tutoring services. So we're still trying to meet the needs that we've identified as teachers and from parents who have messaged me with concerns about students on the remote days. In addition to that, I met with the Y staff, Alicia Grindle and Shauna, on Monday morning and talked about a place at the Y where she could do this for students who were recommended, who attended that program. So they would have a quiet space where she'd be able to do this type of intervention groups and support students with their homework through that. So we wanted to have, it's not intended to that, but some of the students who were recommended attend that Y program. So we wanted to make sure that they had the technology to provide a space that could be conducive to a learning environment. So that they're working and checking their technology and working on that so that we can continue that collaboration. It's not just geared for all Y kids, but it's geared for those kids who have identified who need support. Our special ed referrals are being finalized this week. The reason that they're all being finalized this week is so that we can have our meetings, we can have all of our evaluations complete, so that every student who's referred for special ed has a plan in place before the end of this school year. So we are working on a lot of first step meetings, having a lot of conversations with regard to that. So those are really the big three supports that we've focused on over the past month and a half to get in place for our students.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So I had heard from someone in the community that, and you may not be able to answer this, it might have to be something we follow up with later with Peter, but they had mentioned that their student was going to the Y and that they were coming home without their remote work done, that it was, and when they talked to the person at the Y about it, that it's a choice for them to do it. Do you know anything about that, how that aspect of it works?
That's not been communicated to me in any of the meetings that I have. They're always looking for support from us and helping students do the work. Teachers send their weekly memos for K4, like what was due today or checklist. They send those to the Y as well, and then I scan some of the printed ones that teachers leave in my basket. So they're looking for support about what to do or how to do that. I think it's important to note that the Y is not a school.
Right.
It is a remote program, and they're doing it to support our community and our school, and it's a great opportunity for that, but also they're looking for support from us and parents to be able to help them do that better. But it's not my understanding that that's usually a choice.
Okay, gotcha. Well, and this may have been at the very, very beginning, like in the first.
And they've had a change in leadership, and they've put different things in place, and I know that they've shifted classrooms around. We're trying to meet, we've met probably 3 times, and we're trying to meet monthly now just to stay in better connection. They have 74 of our kids, 74, 71 of our kids. They have a good portion of our kids, and especially a lot of our Maroon Day kids. That number is pretty much doubled in the gray days.
Yeah, and I think what you said is really important, that it's important to remember that this isn't a school. No. This is like something that almost like was put together to help to accommodate families
to
in
support
this
our
situation.
community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important. The people that run the program are fabulous, but they're not certified teachers. And so I think that that's important to recognize, and that we're providing all the support we can when they ask for it, and we're trying to meet continuously to improve our collaboration. And we do troubleshoot together. We've talked about, they've reached out for some of our policies that we have on bullying. They've reached out for some of the trainings that we've used, and I've shared some resources that we've used in the past. So I know that they're looking to help, support each other in our community. So that's kind of how I'm viewing that. But we're trying to increase the frequency of our meetings because we'd only done 3 in the beginning, but it was a tough start to the year, honestly. But we've done 3, and then now we're going to try to do monthly so that we can stay in closer touch.
Right, and how awesome is it that they're learning these things about the school department too, because when this is over, sooner rather than later, hopefully, when they're the kids that they're serving in our community, they've got these almost like guiding principles in their mind too, so hopefully, possibly when kids are coming into the school system, they've already kind of got that a little bit of that background too.
Yeah. Any other questions with regard to some of the student supports we're offering now in the hybrid?
I think mine goes to the next topic, so I'm going to wait. Thank you, April.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, April.
Mrs. Bowles.
So just a couple of updates from last month. Currently, we are at 21 100% remote students, which I think for us is a pretty good number. It's down a little bit. We are going to look to our last phase of going to 4 or 5 days a week is hopefully going to start next week with welding. Welding is our largest enrolled program and probably one of the most difficult to figure out, not just because of transportation, but also just the physical setup of the welding booths, having been there again today. It is a challenge figuring out to keep the spacing guidelines. So what we're looking to do is increase welding to 3 days a week, see how that goes, and if after a few weeks we can add a 4th day, we will. But at the beginning, we're going to start with 3 days a week, which is an increase of 1 day for kids per week, which will be very good. So they're excited about that. And I think the other big update for us is our live work has started to pick up. Obviously for culinary arts, Brookside Restaurant, our health occupation students are in the nursing facilities and are getting weekly tested for COVID to go into these nursing home facilities and getting their clinical hours so they can earn their certifications. So that's been really, really important for those kids because we are behind in getting them their hours. And then, we're starting to pick up also our internship opportunities for kids. Our hospitality program is going to start. We're focusing at our school on those programs that the hours are directly tied to a certification. Mm-hmm. And that's where we're going to start first. So for hospitality, they need 100 hours to get certified. And so for us, what we're requiring is wherever a student is going to be placed that they're going to physically go into, I'm reviewing the business protocols to make sure they're in line with the school department safety protocols and making sure that both sides understand that they have to follow our rules and we have to follow theirs for the safety of both entities. So we're reviewing those so that our hospitality kids can start getting out there and getting their hours as well. And projects are starting to pick up. We're not letting public into the building, but we have figured out ways to make it work to get some live work opportunities for kids going without having people come into the building. So that's picking up as well. And I, like everyone else, as the weather continues to get warmer and hopefully the numbers continue to trend down, I anticipate that'll increase as well. But we feel good about where we're at, considering everything and what our kids are doing and what we've been able to put in place. So we feel like we're on pretty good water. Questions about HCTC?
How many of your students are attending 5 days a week?
Oh,
how many of
I'd
your
have to
programs?
look because we just updated it.
If you have one.
It was over 60 last I looked, are 5 days a week. And now we have a population that are 4 days a week because of the addition of culinary and media. And we've started cycling through our 21 remote to try to get them back, especially now that live work is picking up. Because what I'm doing is students that are 100% remote that don't have family health situations preventing them from coming, I am not comfortable placing them because we haven't vetted their skill level to
Yeah.
go out into the community. And
That's
until we
perfect
can
sense.
do the live work stuff and vet that they're safe, I won't let them go out. And for some, that's motivating kids to come back. So at April's meeting, I hope to have a complete breakdown, because welding will be back. The 100% remote kids will have been contacted, and we'll have a complete breakdown of each group like I did last month. But I would say probably over half are back to 4 or 5 days a week, well over half, which is
Right.
really good. Yeah.
Awesome. Did you ever play Tetris when you were younger?
I did.
'Cause that's pretty much what you're doing now.
Yeah, attendance is fun. Wait, are they hybrid? Wait, are they maroon? Or, no, they're purple at Bucksport. Oh, wait. It's a puzzle, but it's all right. Any other questions?
I have a question. So your early childhood development program was able to do some of their hours virtually. They approved that. Are there any other programs that were able to start some of their? No. So everything
No.
else needs to be in person.
Everything else has to be in person. And even early childhood is going to start getting tough because they're
Yeah.
going to have to do some of it in person. And we're still not, learning facilities. We can't send kids into the elementary school right now to do their internships with teachers.
Right.
I wouldn't even feel comfortable putting that on teachers' plates right now, even if it was allowed. We're not at that point yet. Our seniors were in good shape last year. And that number in that class is small. So I'm not worried about them. Our juniors next year, we're going to have to put the pedal to the metal when they're seniors to get them their SECA certification hours next year. But we've got some plans. I think what we'll probably do in early childhood is push more of the classroom hours this year. So that next year we'll loosen up some of the classroom hours to do more live work hours, just in planning purposes to try to get that
The balance.
balanced out.
Yeah.
In hopes that they can do it next year.
Do you think, and this is just a guess, that you have a decent population of those people in early childhood education that are above 18 that would possibly be eligible for vaccination when they open up the vaccine to people working in preschool? They should qualify. I mean, hypothetically, if they want it.
Looking at my kids that are in early childhood too right now, we actually don't have many that would meet that criteria yet.
So I think one is 18, I think one is 16. I think Pfizer and Moderna have 2 different age thresholds, which I will find out for you for sure, but.
Yep. Yeah, it's a really small group of kids in there.
Yeah, it is.
And I don't think some might be turning 18 soon, but I don't believe any of them are at this point.
No, I mean, do their hours have to be in the school system, or is it possible that they could go to another, like, private daycare, maybe that
It
has a
has
little
to
bit more
be-
bandwidth for that?
Right. It has to be an approved learning facility. So it could be an in-home daycare that we have vetted. It could be a preschool, a Y. It could be. The issue is, right now that we're running into it, it's a statewide issue. It's not just an us issue. The guidelines are the guidelines, and we're pretty strict about them. And if other learning facilities aren't necessarily as stringent with those, I'm not sending my kids there.
No, that makes perfect sense.
So it's
If not, it defeats the purpose of having the stringent guidelines at school.
Yes, and most learning facilities right now aren't taking interns anyway. I mean, really, the nursing homes are really the only place right now that's letting that kind of experience happen. It's because they have access to weekly testing. So they know they're protecting their patients, by doing that. But early learning facilities don't have that. Right. So it is a little bit of a slippery slope with early learning centers.
Yeah.
For sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Would any of these hours that are needed for your students, would it qualify if they were to be paired with an elementary school teacher that had kids who had maybe needed some extra tutoring, and that tutoring could be done online? Could those qualify as hours?
We've talked about that. The problem is there has to be a teacher observing at all times.
Yeah.
So even if they're Zooming and tutoring, the teacher still has to be present. And so we've talked a lot about, we want these kids to get hours, but not at the burden of educators.
Yeah.
So we're really trying to balance for our juniors more than our seniors. Our seniors will be okay, but our juniors, we're really focusing on the virtual stuff right now that they're doing on our Caterpillar Clubhouse Facebook page and using those hours right now. And as soon as we can get them into live work, we will. But we're really trying to do it in a way that's thoughtful and doesn't put added stress on my instructor to have to supervise these kids in a COVID environment at all different facilities, but then also the educators, whether they're Ellsworth, Bucksport, Sumner educators that are having to mentor these kids and take on that added responsibility. So it's tough. Yeah, it's a lot to think about. Yes. Trying to protect both sides.
That's right.
But still get the kid what they need. So, yeah.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Two things. Annie Sargent has some things to report, but also, by policy, we're at 2 hours, so you guys need to have a consensus
yes.
to continue.
Consensus? Yes?
Yes.
We're continuing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Annie, you may go right ahead.
Hi there. So I'm just going to review because I haven't been to meetings in a while. So our high-set diploma, building the basics, so our literacy program, college transitions, and career and job readiness are being offered using a hybrid model. And we're lucky in that any student in our program that wants to, so far, wants to come in person can. So it's a choice model for them. And critical to success in our program is starting with online or in-person advising that tailored to meet their unique needs. And some of the assessments, we have to do all these required assessments, are available online and some in person. And we're finding that building that relationship with the student in person is critical. So that's our goal with all of our students. And our biggest challenge, based on what you just heard from the K-12 folks, is that for many of our adult learners, remote is the most appealing, right? For obvious reasons. Transportation, childcare, money for gas. But we found that we're not able to build that trusting relationship that they almost don't realize that we're making with them, with the new learners, to have the same level of that psychosocial support. As somebody mentioned, I think it was April, we're not counselors, but we do provide a lot of psychosocial support that's critical to persistence. So our adults are juggling so many challenges. I'm sure you're aware of this, but homelessness, food insecurity, short-term jobs, so they don't want to miss a day of work because they need every penny that they earn. So they'll cancel sessions with us, which didn't happen as much in the past. And even though they realize that this education, getting their high set, for example, is a ticket to more opportunities, it's a huge challenge for them. So the idea of online learning on face value seems perfect with kids studying in a hybrid model as well. So we're working hard to get structures in place. We're a little behind the K-12, but thanks to CRF funds, we have Chromebooks and hotspots to loan. There are more online assessment tools that we're using actually not only for remote learning, but also social distancing in the classroom. And we're also preparing agreements with student input to clarify expectations and motivate learners to be engaged in their learning. Our priority right now, honestly, if you think about it, we're working with the parents of the students that are in the schools primarily. And so our goal is to keep them engaged, as engaged as possible at this time, to make sure that they're in the driver's seat of this chapter of their learning. They set the pace, the approach, and the content, and we do everything in our power to support them in their studies and in navigating the challenges in their lives. I had a great day today. We can only do a high set test. I can only administer a HiSET test to 4 students, and we had a waiting list for HiSET testing. So we're definitely serving students, but it's a challenge for everybody right now. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't right now, but thank you, Annie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Love my job. Thank you so much.
We can tell.
Oh, yes.
All right. So is that all we have for an update on the hybrid then?
It is. Could I just say one thing? I just want to express appreciation to all of our administrators for the report they gave tonight and for the work they're doing with their staff members and with families as they're able to try to address the challenges and try to move forward in a very difficult and trying time. I think when you listen to what you heard from these folks coming up here tonight, including Annie on the screen, and I heard Annie say it, they really care about kids, they care about our families, they care about our community, and it's not surprising, but it's just a great confirmation of the people that we have working here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Before we move on to item 2, I'm just curious, does anybody have an update on the basketball game?
Yep. I do.
Yep.
Ellsworth won by 5.
Excellent. And they move on to what, Dan?
If Bangor wins, they play Thursday. If Brewer wins, they play Friday.
Friday.
And
Excellent.
We host.
Oh,
We'll host
excellent.
Bangor. If Brewer wins, we play at Brewer.
Great. Very cool. Thank you.
Before we move to
Yes.
the next part, I do
I
have
was going to get to that too.
a question, right? I do have a question in regards to vaccinations, and this is from Marlena Bishop. Is there any chance there will be a vaccine clinic for school staff that are under 60? A friend at another Hancock County school is getting her vaccine through a clinic this Friday.
Yep. What I can tell you from the information I have, there may still be a Department of Ed, DHHS-sponsored 50 through 59 clinic. Now, in theory, that wasn't supposed to be until April. Whether they're able to move that up or not, I do not know. I do know that in some areas of the state, maybe even locally, there have been some providers that have reached out to schools to try to do a clinic. I've had a conversation locally, and we have not had that opportunity presented to us.
Okay.
If we did get it presented to us,
You'd be
because I'd say
on
it this way,
that.
we've been following the guidance and the guidelines and what we've been told to do.
Yeah.
If we had someone come and say, we've got 400 vaccines for your staff, my inclination would be to say, yes, let's find a way to make it happen.
Right. Yep. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Item number 2 under new business, discussion on factors involved in possible increase of in-person instruction of students in the Ellsworth School Department schools. This is for discussion. I was going to do a report on the parent meeting and lead into that. Do you have anything else to
I
add
was gonna
before
say,
we go in?
if you want, I've got a few things to add. You may cover some of them in your update
Okay.
with the parent meeting, but I would say, why don't you go ahead?
Okay.
And I'll fill in with what.
All right, so another committee report. So Dan and I had a meeting back on February 16th with a group of representatives from a larger parent group who were advocating to see students back in school full-time, 5 days a week in person. Dan and I listened to their concerns. They all kind of went along the same concerns as we've heard, over the past several months with the difficulty with the continued hybrid plan. Main concerns were academic struggles, social and emotional health of our students, length of time students have been without routines and structures, and the worry that comes with that, lack of engagement and whatnot. We discussed the challenges in place at that current time, which obviously things are transpiring rather quickly and there is some light here coming. But at that time, discussed and agreed that more information was needed. And so as you heard some of the administrators report, Dan had requested an update on enrollment numbers, and then we can discuss on an update on capacity. So where are we at with who is in person and on what days? Is there an imbalance there? Can we bring, just like we mentioned, some of those remote students back in? Or based off student need, is there a possibility of bringing particular students back more often? And we're going to be discussing that tonight. Obviously, we have new encouraging news since then about vaccinations, so that is encouraging, and all of that continues to change. The discussion kind of leaned towards a possible phased reentry. So that's where that was, but of course that was 3 weeks ago. And obviously things have started to change quite a bit. So obviously we wanted to have this on the agenda tonight so that the full board could have a discussion and thoughts about where we would like to see this proceed, and also a possibility of a reentry plan team. So similar to the guidelines where in the summer and fall we would have members of this team be all-encompassing. So a school board member or two, obviously Dan, building administrators, other administrators like our special ed director, a representative from that parent group, teachers from each building, an EEA rep, and then parents possibly, in addition to this parent rep, a parent from each building. Curriculum coordinator, school nurse, something along those lines, so that we could discuss challenges, what would work, where the school system might come up against some different needs like transportation, because those guidelines still have their limitations in place currently, and then those seem to be coming and kind of lifting as we go on with the weeks. So that was that conversation, and then Dan, if you want to add.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's a great synopsis of the conversation. I really thought it was a positive conversation with this group of parents, and as Jen said, this is a group of parents who represent several others who would like to see a full return to in-person instruction 5 days a week for all students, which I think is a goal we would all have. We'd all like to see that. And they even said in a safe and healthy fashion. But we also talked a little bit in that meeting about the fact that they represent one perspective in the community. We still have some parents, and I think you heard a couple of our administrators mention it, who aren't ready to send their kids back full-time, whether they'd like to keep them in remote or they like the hybrid or what have it. So I think any group that we form to come back and talk about what we may be able to do should include representation from various family groups. But I would really term the meeting as very positive. I thought anyway.
Absolutely.
And with some energy. And even though we didn't walk away saying we're going to bring every kid back, we came away saying there are some things that we should think about. And this is kind of where I'd like to lead into the things that I'd like to share, because there were some specifics that we talked about, and these may be some things that community members may or may not be aware of, but just to try to do this very quickly. I mentioned in my report earlier a couple of positive developments. Obviously one, we see with what's happening with vaccinations. That's a positive trend, and it appears as though it's going to continue to be. And I would encourage people to watch News Center Maine tonight, because evidently for school staff, there's another way. It's called waste vaccinations. I saw this on the news. If you call the pharmacies, and in some cases you can get on a waste list. So if there's a vaccine where someone doesn't show up for their appointment, you can get on a callback. You might get a call within a half an hour.
Yes, because if they don't use them, they have to toss them.
Exactly.
They have to take them out.
So just as an aside, and again, I shouldn't do that. I get on the side and I keep going aside.
Good information, right?
Yeah, I thought that would work. So, but that's obviously a positive piece. The other pieces that are positive, obviously, we watched from November through early February the cases and the hospitalizations and deaths go like this, and we've watched them go like this over the past weeks. That's a great trend. It's hopefully a continuing trend. I think that's helpful. The other piece, and again, acknowledging, we said this to the parent group, acknowledging that we don't have testing in our schools, but there's a continued lack of evidence of community transmission within our schools, even with the positive cases that we've had. So that's a positive. The other piece that I think it's a tribute to is the fact that the health and safety requirements do work. The other piece, and I think this is an important piece for people to think about, the continued lack of evidence of community transmission, this is also in evidence, even though really when you look at the cohorting that was put in place back in August, you remember one of the pieces was set up different cohorts, and that's what our hybrid model is built upon. If you think about it, look at the transition from fall until now. In the fall, we had maroon groups and gray groups, and we still have them. On your buses, they're still separated by maroon and gray, but they're not necessarily separated by grade spans. Okay, and that's a much smaller population on a bus, 21 kids on a bus. Okay, when you look at interscholastic athletics that took place, middle school and high school, there was a crossover of cohorts there. Okay? That has continued through the fall season. That also continued through the winter season, where you had a mixing of cohorts to a certain extent. You still maintained it in the school on your school days, but in other areas you didn't. Also, as we've seen, and again, this is not a judgment upon anybody, but if you look at cohorting, everybody makes their own choices. Everybody makes their own decisions about bubbles. But we have families who interact with each other and have stayed safe doing so. We have other families who have not interacted with their families. We have students who are working in public organizations. So where I'm going with that is, cohorting is within our schools, it's helpful, but you still have a lack of community transmission based upon the evidence that we have. Mm-hmm. Where I'm going with that is, there may be a possibility to increase in-person instruction. Okay. Some of the things that I think are positive but still do not have answers. Okay. Right now, we still have the health and safety requirements that are in place by CDC, DHHS, and Department of Ed. Okay. We are required to follow those as a superintendent, as administration, and as a board. The questions coming forth are going to be, with these positive trends, might there be some changes to those over the next coming weeks? We don't know the answer to that. The other piece, I haven't seen this yet, but you look at the governor's recent announcement on the economy and the public gathering spaces. I haven't seen anything yet to reflect that that's going to change in schools. You talk about the 50% capacity, 75% capacity. I talked to Mr. Clifford earlier today, and we were talking about, will that percentage piece find its way into schools, or are we still going to have 50 in a hallway? And we talked about, well, what were the, did you figure it out, Mr. Clifford? What's the capacity of the third floor hallway, north-south?
Not sure.
Yeah. Mrs. Corson, do you know?
Nope.
You're in the east-west. Okay. But that's a piece that would be good to know. It would be helpful to know. The other piece is, you've got the federal CDC issuing their own reopening school guidelines. And again, I think it's important for members of our community to know, when you're talking across the country, you have many states and many regions where schools have not been open to in-person instruction at all. So those guidelines, I believe, were developed specifically for those, but what is the interplay between the federal guidelines and what we have in Maine? If you look at the color coding system federally, and this was the case a couple of weeks ago, where we would be, as a county, we would be told you should be in hybrid, not green. Okay. So will there be any changes? Will there be anything that reflects that might allow us to do some things and give us more flexibility? So I think those are questions that we don't know the answers to, that we're going to have to monitor. Another example of how things can change on a daily basis. I am part of a smaller group of superintendents that met, I think it was the week after the meeting that Jen and I had with the parents, to take a look at the health and safety requirements and look at the current science as we have it. To our knowledge, there has not been any move in Augusta to change those guidelines, but we're monitoring those. And I think that group is supposed to meet again in the next couple of weeks. So I think those are some positive developments with some questions. The other piece that we talked about, and I think this is also important for you as a board and our community, and the principals have this information, we need to look at our capacity in our buildings with the current health and safety guidelines and executive orders. So, I'll use EMS as an example. When we calculated based upon the health and safety for the reopening of school, we looked at grades 5 through 8 having a total capacity of classrooms of approximately 240 students. So if you look at the maroon colors that Erica mentioned earlier, 161, gray 147, 43 fully remote students, there is some room there based upon the total number where you might be able to bring some students back 5 days a week. So maybe little Danny Higgins, I call myself Danny. Little Danny Higgins could go to school. He's in the gray cohort, but he could go on the maroon cohort days too, because this space and the factors worked out. there may be some opportunity for us to do that. So stick with me on that because there are some challenges that come with it too. If you look at the high school, I know Dan has got numbers on what they have on maroon days and gray days. Our capacity at the high school is 258 based upon the current health and safety requirements. April has similar numbers, and when you look there, I believe the number is 260 K through 4 was our capacity, and April's got numbers on that. We didn't ask Mrs. Bowles to participate in this because she's already ahead of the curve in this, and she's already working on this. In fact, that's going to be helpful to us moving forward, as at HCTC, they've already been through some of this process. It will inform what we're trying to do. But some of the other factors that go along with this are staffing levels to accommodate. You heard April mention at the last meeting back in February, it seems so long ago, that with the positions that we have not been able to fill, there are days in which we have, in the hybrid model, we have staffing to provide the level of services that we need to. Depending upon how many students you bring in, you may not have that on those days. So that's something we have to be cognizant of. The other piece, and this is a significant one, guys, we've talked about 6 foot 3 feet, okay, and I think we've had that conversation over and over. But when you talk about lunch, 6 feet for lunch, no masks on, is still in place. Okay, that is a significant barrier, and I can tell you it's a barrier across the state. The group that I met with when we first started, the question was, is there any indication that that is going to be changed? If not, it's going to be a long road. So that's something we've got to be cognizant of. Right now, the 6 foot piece for school lunches is something that has prevented us from reducing from 6 foot to 3 foot in a lot of parts of our schools. The other piece is transportation. As you folks already know, we're currently down 3 drivers. Okay, one of them is expected back at the end of this week. 2 of them are not expected back until after April vacation. Okay, so we're still doing double runs on a number of days. By bringing more students back, we're going to have to look at what the impact on transportation is going to be. And when we talk about a survey, that may be someplace where we can find some information. But that would be a challenge. You remember we were able to use CRF funds to buy a couple of buses. That's great, because that might be able to take some of those students.
But
Here's
we
the only
need
problem.
someone to drive
Exactly.
them.
I've been begging Jack Turcotte to come back and drive for us. I have had no luck. So, Jack, if you're listening, I have an opening for you. Scheduling, and again, you heard the principals talk about this. If you think about our different grade spans, K4 is self-contained. So if you have space K through 4, just in terms of numbers, I think April would have an easier time determining how many students might be able to come back and being able to work them in. Okay. If you go 5 through 8 with Erica, they have students that change classes. So there's another element to that. How many students are going to be in math? How many students are going to be in science? What's the difference there? When you get to the high school, Dan and Rebecca and Josh, and I think Dan and Rebecca will probably delegate this to Josh. Right, Dan? Okay. You've got students that are changing classes every period. So I'm looking at Mrs. Corson out here. In one period, she might have 9 students with space for 14, but in another period, she may be at capacity. So there's that interplay. So there's that challenge. Spaces for potentially larger classes. You heard Dan talk about this a month ago. Already with some of those classes that are larger than what would fit in a classroom, we're using the library, we're using the all-purpose room, and I think there's another location too, right, Dan?
Auditorium.
Thank you, auditorium. So that's another piece. I mentioned we're going to use the experience from HCTC to help us with the survey and with communication with parents. I'll talk about the survey in a minute. But even with all of those factors, and I'm confident that we can work through those and determine how many students we could allow to be in person 5 days a week. It's not going to be all of them, but this comes to the biggest challenge is equity. And I think I asked the board members this at a recent meeting. So unless health and safety requirements are amended that will permit everybody return to full 5-day instruction, we're not going to be able to accommodate all of our kids 5 days a week. We would be able to accommodate some, but here's the challenge. And I'll ask the same question. I've got 5 school board members here. You all have children in the same grade. There's 5 kids. We have space for 3 people, 3 students to come in. Who gets to come?
The children that are struggling the most.
Okay, and I agree, Kelly, but
I could argue,
the challenge we have on that is,
argue that
how do you
mine is
determine what is the
struggling,
struggle? So you can talk academically, you can talk socially and emotionally, you can talk special needs, you could talk age level, you could talk childcare, you could talk home situation where both parents are working. So each of the 5 of you could make an argument that that's a more critical piece. That's probably the biggest challenge that we face in bringing more kids back in person. So however we move forward with this conversation, and I think we need to, I think we really need to, that's got to be a factor that not everybody is going to end up being happy. So just to put that out there. But for me, I view this as an opportunity to take the positive factors to bring back students, to meet capacity as permitted by the health and safety requirements. And again, maybe they'll change. Maybe there will be some changes that will allow that to happen so that we can bring people back in a safe and healthy way. The other piece, and I referenced it, a survey. So we're going to need some information. Obviously, the principals have been updating. They're maroon, they're gray, and they're hybrid. But each one of them has said to me, what I have for a count on one day changes because I might have 4 more remote students coming back or someone has decided to go out. So those numbers change. So we've got a group right now that includes Mrs. Bowles, Mrs. Johns, Mrs. Corman Ramos, who are putting together a survey, and I'm hoping we're going to have it ready to go by the end of next week that will include probably a survey for K-8 and 9-12. Maybe we break it up K-4, 5-8, 9-12, because again, we got 3 different spans and 3 different types of enrollment patterns. Where we're going to need to know, verify current status and desire to change. So how many of our remote families are going to want to bring their children back, and how many of them are comfortable staying where they are? Of the hybrid piece, how many of them are interested in increasing the number of days in person? Some of them may not be. Okay? We're going to need that information to help inform this process. Challenging one, what is the rationale for wanting to return to in-person instruction? And that's where the biggest challenge is going to be. Transportation needs, again, if you look at our buses right now, even with all of our drivers, most of our buses are operating close to or at capacity based upon the current spacing. So we're going to want to know, if you are able to bring your children back more often for in-person learning, will you require school transportation? Or is it a case where you're going to be able to transport your own children? That's other information we need. Also, food service, Ray and his staff, and again, I should also say Donnie and his staff, Chuck and his staff, our principals, all of our staff are doing a great job and required to be a part of this. But Ray and his staff have a system set up where they're able to provide the meal service. We need to have numbers for them so that they can prepare properly. So those are the types of items that need to be in this survey. I know Laura and Amy and Rachel, I think you met last Friday, Amy.
Yeah.
We're going to meet again. So to me, the next steps are to get the survey conducted and out, continue to refine planning at the building level with those factors, and as Jen said, create a working group to discuss the factors, and I would agree, Jen. So some members of the leadership team need to be there, and I heard you mention most of the ones that I'm thinking of. You need to have, I think, your building principals. You need to have at least one of our school nurses. Whether maintenance, food service, transportation need to be part of each meeting, I'm not sure, but they certainly have to be a reference. Mm-hmm. You need to have staff members representing each grade span. I think it's important that the associations have an opportunity to have a representative of that group. And parents maybe representing each grade span and a variety of factions. Things are changing quickly. After the meeting, Jen, we have parents. My thought was maybe this is something that could be put into place after April vacation, where you could start bringing people back. I don't know. Maybe before that, but there's still some pieces to do to put into place. So those are all the factors that are out there, folks.
Mm-hmm. I just want to add real quick, when I was giving the list and Dan had mentioned Amy being on that committee and maybe not necessarily having a parent from her building or a teacher from her building just because they're already rolling, but how crucial that would be. So, and also because she's got to figure in how her students work into our high school if we are back at that. So we definitely need to keep that in mind.
Jen, real quickly, not to derail us, but
Nope.
Laura, if you can hear me, I got a message that our Facebook live feed is not working. We're working on YouTube, but not on Facebook.
Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to get that.
That's good information.
Thank
I
you.
just didn't want to miss that. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's good. So that's a lot of information, folks. So
I have a question, Dan. When do you expect, what could possibly be the quickest we could get the survey out and get the information back to us?
I think once the group that's working, and it's a good group, I mean, you've got some expertise, you know, Amy's already been through this. Amy, you didn't do a formal survey, you spent most of your time phone, right? Yeah. So Amy's bringing that experience to it. Rachel's very good with that. I'd like to think if we have it done by the end of next week, we can get it out because we can do it electronically. And it's a matter of getting the information back. Again, I know I'm pushing them because there's a lot going on. I'm also pushing these guys because some of them still need to come and present their budgets to me.
We have those meetings next week.
I'm not saying any names.
And the laughter from the back didn't give it away at all.
That's not of my doing. So Kelly, I think it's fair to say if we can get it in a format that's ready to go, we can have it out the end of next week, and we can say now, folks, if a survey comes to you with these questions, please respond to it as soon as you can, and it comes right back.
I have a oops, sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't know who I was talking over.
That's okay.
So the 3 feet, I have 2 questions in the 3 feet versus the 6 feet.
Yep.
So in the 3 feet, in regards to that you can't eat in a room unless you're 6 feet apart, what are the odds of us being able to get kids back to using their lockers? Like, I know, on a personal note, I have an 11-year-old who weighs 110 pounds and he's carrying a backpack that weighs 25, and he's having to carry that all over the place. Like, you know, if they can be within 3 feet of each other in the hallway, is it at all possible to get back to being able to use lockers so they're not having to carry all of that everywhere? I'm sure that logistics.
That's a question the administrators
that's
a question the administrators haven't asked in a while. But where we are with that is the amount of cleaning that it would take to wipe those surfaces down. I mean, we have staff members across the school, custodians, teachers, ed techs, principals, who are wiping surfaces on a regular basis. To add, you know, if you're talking, you know, 190 students. Yeah, you can see our teachers are looking at their hands, they're all dry.
Yeah.
190 students in a school, that's 190 lockers that are going to have to be wiped down.
Yeah.
So
Now, even if they're designated to a specific student and they're only touching their locker, I mean, I know they wipe down their own, like students wipe down their own desk space before they switch a classroom? They don't do that?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Credit to our staff, our teachers do that.
Okay. All right, so that was just a...
So I think the whole eating thing is actually a lot easier than you think. I think you don't necessarily feed them all at once. You send half of them to the playground, half of them eat, or you send half of them outside to eat. People like my child who brings her lunch every day could just as easily have her lunch outside with, you know, half the kids.
And that brings up another consideration. So as we get closer to spring, and again, you look at the forecast for this week, as the weather gets better, we get the tents back up, that may become an option. But if you get a period of time when it's really cold.
Yeah.
I think it could be accomplished without a tent, though.
Yes, and actually...
Especially kids with sack lunches.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's flexibility in that, and it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all, you know, concrete thing where you have to be sitting at your desk to eat a lunch.
I mean, Abby, even if we could, you know, we looked at, like, take EEMS. You know, if you've got 200 students K through 4, 200 students 5 through 8, in the cafeteria, if you were able to feed them there, take a look at, right now, it's 50 people, okay? Even with 50 people, if you space them 6 feet apart, I think we probably could get 50 in there. But take the number of groups of 40 to 50 that you'd have to feed and the amount of time it's going to take during the day to do that. Okay? That's another consideration. That's one reason that we don't use the cafeteria for lunches.
Right. Now, and see, this is one benefit I see to the parent group is that, or like the advisory group, is that there could be some creative thoughts brought about during that.
You need to think outside the box.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
what it comes down to.
I did get
honestly.
a comment question from Casey Hardwick Why can't we be creative on where kids eat lunch to be 6 feet apart? Why can't they eat in hallways, in the gym? So I think you kind of addressed the hallways, because that's another space to be wiped down, but again, a place where it could be really beneficial for ideas.
I think that was a question that was brought up in the meeting that Jen and I had with the parents was, can you put, at the element, can you put desks in the hallways and have kids eat there? You could, but then becomes the issue of cleaning those desks. I mean, I'm not trying to put barriers up to say no, but these are real pieces.
Not even at desks, though, circles on the floor, or picnic style, or make it fun. And I think what ends up coming down to, honestly, is that with other schools in our area opening up full-time as a choice, this is one of the things that I think we have to remember is offering in-person instruction does not mean that every student is going to choose in-person instruction. If we have an option of in-person instruction, hybrid, and because most of the time, and not at some grade levels, but most of the time there's that synchronous learning piece that's still available. So if someone chose hybrid, or they're still feeling the need for fully remote, those options are there. And I think we really need to look at the 3 foot at this point as things are opening up and we have capacities changing and numbers rising with how many can be in spaces, and that's all on the horizon. I think we would be doing a huge disservice to our students if we were not acting proactively, quickly, and having this committee formed as soon as possible and having that survey done way sooner than next Friday.
Right.
And that's not putting pressure on Amy and Rachel and Laura, but that's saying, things need to start happening now.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
as things change, which we've seen they've rapidly done, I mean, in a week.
Right.
We're talking, at this point, there's 3 months.
Right.
So, I mean, if we're hoping for something after April vacation, the sooner, and that's exactly it, because you may find that that survey eliminates some of those barriers, because you may have people who say, no way am I sending my kid 5 days a week.
And I'll give you an example.
I want to remain remote.
I'll give you an example.
Absolutely.
Mount Desert Island High School on Monday is taking a situation where they're giving students who are in the hybrid model an opportunity to come to school 4 days a week. They still have 1 remote. Okay. What people need to understand, however, is the reason they are able to do that. They still have 200 students at their high school that are fully remote. So they have the space in the building. I talked to Superintendent Gauss today. 200 people fully remote. They have space in their building to accommodate people who want to be there. They're still giving the option for hybrid, which is exactly what we would do. But he also emphasized to me, they're still at 6 foot spacing at MDI High School in doing that. But just to say that when I first heard about this, I was told MDI is going back to 5 days a week with everybody. They are not.
But they have the option.
Right.
Well, the people who are in hybrid have the option right now. And they're able to do that because 200 members of their high school student body are staying fully remote. They're still doing 6 feet. Now, they've said, if we have space and somebody fully remote wants to come back, you can ask to do it. But I think that's the direction that we're headed. As soon as we can get that information, we can start to put those pieces of it. Think back to August, when we did the survey, we modeled it. Had the numbers come out right, that's how we would have started the school year. But I agree with you. If we can get the survey out before then, that's even better.
I think that's key, though, because the information in the summer and fall via that survey was a difficult one, because I don't think people felt that was clear. Yes, Abby?
So I don't see any reason why we should be looking at, from the teacher's point of view, identifying some people that we should maybe think about reaching out to and bringing back a few students, maybe not even 5 days a week, but 4 days a week, 5 days a week. If we've got these cohorts that are imbalanced, that to me says we have a perfect opportunity to take some very, specific kids who really need to be back in. We don't need, I'm going to say right now, I am not going to sit back and wait till after April vacation to bring back students that could be back now. I mean, we have let this sit long enough. I understand full well that this is probably going to mean some double bus runs. That's the long and short of it. I mowed mowed over that in my mind all weekend. Transportation is a very tricky little bugger, and it's going to come down to double bus runs. Unless these parents really want to get, together and
Carpool
do some
and do whatever.
serious carpooling, it's going to come
Unless
down to
these
double
parents
bus runs.
want to drive a bus.
So let's just all accept double bus runs as part of the equation and understand that we might have to be creative as to where a few kids eat lunch, and maybe ask some parents, would you volunteer for your child to eat lunch at the track? Maybe this is where we start, and maybe we ask our teachers, okay, let's take X amount of kids to balance out these cohorts. Let's get them back next week.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get a list of kids who you think we should reach out to, and then reach out to these parents, and let's see if we can have those kids back in by not this Friday, but this coming Friday.
I think that's the interesting thing, is we're talking about need, because Dan had mentioned in that meeting, we were talking about like a phased reentry, and that was the best way to word it, because that's what it would be based off of need initially. And I thought it was interesting because those parents in particular, and it was a great conversation, and we talked about compassion, because you take any of our children's classes and that there's students who are thriving, they're doing okay, and their families could work with a hybrid situation for several more weeks if it meant that 5 of the kids in that class who really cannot, they absolutely cannot, and they need to have that time back in the classroom before our school year ends so that we know where they're going to be at for the next year. And so I think that creates this, if this survey goes out and everybody answers it honestly, can you as a family hang on a few more weeks in the hybrid situation if it means that the first thing we're going to do is get these students back with need? And then, with the intent that as these things change and our committee that would be working right along with these guidelines changing, then has the opportunity to say, great, now we can bring back even more and even more and even more, with the goal being that all of our students, as long as those guidelines allow us, are back in school full-time in person. Because I think the key to this really, honestly, is to those who choose and want to be in person, they have the opportunity to do so, because we are losing precious time at the end of this school year for our teachers to even get a good grasp. Where is everybody at? And in person, because we all know things are different remote and family situations are tough, and so getting those students in front of their teachers so that they can have that assessment and that time.
Mr.
Yes.
Higgins? Oops, sorry.
It's okay. I do have a question from Casey Hardwick again. I would like to ask why, and I think we kind of have covered this already, but I just want to read it and then give anyone the opportunity to answer. I'd like to ask why we have not specifically brought children on 504 plans or IEPs back in school 5 days a week, especially when they are clearly suffering in the grade department. Any of those children who are failing one or more classes should be brought back ASAP. Why do I keep hearing about the social distancing of 6 feet when the guidelines state 3 feet for in-person school while masked?
The first part of the question is the challenge of the factors you have to consider in determining what is the highest need. Simply because someone's on a 504 plan doesn't necessarily mean they have a higher need than someone who's struggling academically significantly. It may not. As far as a 6 foot, 3 foot, the only thing I can say on this, and I've said it previously, the health and safety requirements do say that 3 feet is an acceptable distance between students. 6 feet must be between students and staff. Okay. When you look at the number of students that we have in our schools, okay, take a look at the time when students are changing classes in hallways at the middle school and the high school. They're in the hallway, and with the number of students we have, keeping them 3 feet apart is a challenge. Okay. You put more students in there, they're going to be on top of each other. Okay. When you look at the 3 foot, 6 foot piece, and again, I hear the thinking outside of the box and eating in different places. You look at that at EEMS. In order to have students eat, we have already identified that the cafeteria would have lunches served from 9 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon, roughly. We talked about using the gymnasiums, but we didn't want to take away physical activity from kids and physical education. So the only place to feed children has been in classrooms. Therefore, they have to be 6 feet apart because the guidelines are clear, 6 feet apart for lunches without masks. Okay? I mean, we've gone over and over that. So
And
that
I'm
would,
saying
that
we
could,
do
that
it
could be part, that
outside
could,
the classroom. We could eat someplace other than the classroom, or we cannot all eat at the same time. The teacher could be giving a lesson, and we could have a couple kids eating over here, and the other kids 3 feet apart over here. And then, if we had to rotate through, there's a million solutions. There's a million solutions. I just feel like to hold our numbers at where they're at because of a 6-foot rule about eating is a misnomer, because that is a problem that is workable. In a million different ways, that is a problem that is workable. All we have to do is actually work that problem. Even about getting the survey out or whatever, if I understand the staff is stressed, if I need to make the survey from home on my computer, send it out, and collect the data, I will. I have no problem doing that. I understand people are stressed. I understand people are overworked.
I don't think it's a matter of that too. I mean, I think if there's
they can get it done.
Good work and it's happening and they're able to. I mean, it's not going to be a lengthy survey, right? We're going to keep this really short and sweet and to the point. Do you need transportation? Are you willing? Do you have interest in sending your student back full time? Those are things that I think can be done very thoughtfully, so that data can get collected as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things I think we should be considering is there is going to be a need, and April has mentioned this multiple times in the past since our hybrid updates, is staffing. So we as a district need to also be considering thinking outside of the box in that capacity. We have not had a lot of substitutes that have been at our disposal and during this pandemic, and I think we need to have some sort of agreement with our community. We need these students back in school, and we are lacking staff. So do we have community members who, now that things are starting to change and our case numbers are going down and our vaccinations are very, more accessible, I shouldn't say completely accessible, do we have some of those substitutes who were in an age range that were really nervous about substituting in our schools now saying, well, I'm fully vaccinated, so I will come help you out. I will help this school get these kids back in session. And if it means that we need a substitute sitting at the track so kids can go eat lunch or whatever it takes, we need to be thinking outside the box. And I would also highly suggest we offer some sort of hiring incentive for ed techs and bus drivers, because good Lord, we will never get them if we keep going the way we're going. Because I think those two positions there, they are really, we've been lacking ed techs and bus drivers pre-pandemic. If we were very structured with how many bus drivers we had and used, and we were very fortunate that they stayed healthy pre-pandemic. But now we're in a position where we need bus drivers. And I think some sort of hiring incentive would be a huge boost, could possibly get us the staff that we need to offer those 2 new buses to be working at capacity. And staffing with ed techs, there might be certain positions where we can't just have an ed tech 1, but we might be able to shift some of our ed techs, if possible, and hire on more. But we need to do something in that department.
And one of the things I think we need to do is reach out to former staff members who may be in that range where they've been vaccinated. And I think sometimes it's not always we wait for them to come to us. I think if it takes one of us sitting at home on the phone, making phone calls for the district, I'll do it.
And I do know that our principals have reached out to people on the sub list. I can tell you that in some communications over the past week, we have people on our sub list because they are our employees who have been getting vaccinated, who will come back. I mean, that is happening. One of them had their first vaccine yesterday. Their next one's 3 weeks out.
Mm-hmm. And then
There's
2
an
weeks after
opportunity.
that to be
But I know
fully
you guys have
vaccinated.
reached out to retired people and trying to get them to come back. It's not a lack of effort trying to find people to come in.
Maybe
I'm
we
making
need more help. Maybe we need to give you more help. There's only so many hours in the day, and we understand that. But then again, you guys have to also be willing to think out of the box and delegate and say, okay, great, you want to call people? Call people. You know what, there can't be such a tight control that you can't let people in to help you.
Well, I think the other thing is too, that making that statement on subs would be more for the community that's watching. We have parents who really want to see our students back in school full time, and do they have any flexibility in their schedule? Can they offer the elementary school Mondays? Can they offer, and get signed up as a
I'll
sub
say
so that
this,
we can help?
if there are people out there that have that capacity in their schedule that want to be a sub, contact the office, get an application, fill it out. It's
Mhm.
easy to process it.
It needs to be stressed that if we're going to do this, and I think April's situation is one of the ones that comes to mind, because prior to bringing students back full-time at a K-4 level, they need staffing. They need staffing in their special ed department, they need staffing in their school, in the school. Yes, Beth?
I do have one additional comment from Casey Hardwick,
Mhm.
which is, I would also like to state, and this isn't follow-up to the 6 feet requirement, I would also like to state that it is a requirement to pass your classes, to complete high school for a diploma. Those students who are clearly struggling with grades need to take priority.
And I think we can agree that that is absolutely a necessity. Those students that are in danger of not graduating or not moving on, we need to obviously be speaking about that need for very first.
So
And-
this is question for me,
Mhm.
is so hopefully we can get the survey out like ASAP.
Mhm.
How quickly, realistically, could we form a committee
Reentry
of-
plan committee. Mhm.
of parents and staff members and teachers and whatnot? How quickly could something like that
Depending
happen?
upon how you did it, the principals would very easily be able to recommend staff members. The association could give a representative very easily. I see 2 members here tonight.
Mhm.
I don't think there'd be a problem with that with their ladies.
Yeah.
As far as parents, our principals know their parents.
Right.
And certainly, we want to make sure that there was representation from the group that Jen and I met with the representatives.
Correct.
I
And there
think you
is
need-
a
I think you need a broad range
representation for that.
you need a broad range of
Yeah.
families. And we meet tomorrow morning. I mean, that's
So
something that could be
move
put
that
into
along
place.
fairly quickly too, like.
Yeah.
get
So if
something
leadership
formed.
meets tomorrow morning and that's something that can come up so that we can get a plan in place for this committee, then I don't see any reason why we can't,
Be moving forward.
be moving forward with that piece. Simultaneously, having need be looked at so that if there's room in the schedules, we know that the intent could be that, like Dan had mentioned, that there'd be students that, I think administrators are probably going to need to figure out a criteria, and reaching out to families, and saying, and obviously teachers are our best, advocate for that because they know who is struggling in their classroom. And in many ways, obviously, it's not just, special needs students. It's not just academic, it's not social and emotional, so it does get difficult. And we need to know that, parents be patient with that, because if we're getting the ball rolling and we've got kids who are going to take precedence, we've got to have a little bit of compassion from our community. That
Could we set a goal, like a date, that
Mhm.
we're going to have this committee formed and the survey out?
Yep, I think that's
Could
very
that be
reasonable.
as soon as next Friday? Is that reasonable?
Mhm.
I think it is. Amy?
Yeah. We had a plan in place to meet twice this week, and
Mhm.
Rachel is watching, so she and I were just texting. We can do the survey whenever you tell us you want the survey. Like, we'll
Yeah.
make it happen. You just
Yeah.
need to
Tomorrow?
tell us what. We just, you tell us when you want it, we'll get
Right.
the work done for
I-
you.
I think
So-
honestly,
Let's have it out by Friday.
I would say by Friday.
Okay, so just give us a deadline and we'll do it.
Because I think it gives Dan,
Out by Friday, back in by the Friday following?
no, I'd say Monday.
Dan, how do you,
Monday?
Mr.
Okay.
Higgins?
I don't think you're going to get the feedback you need from the community if you put it out this Friday and expect it back by Monday.
Okay,
It's-
so
it's-
5
I'm
days.
sorry.
Oh,
Our-
5 days.
Our community is great, but that's an
How
unreasonable
about You
expectation.
get it out by Thursday and ask them to have it back by Tuesday. Do you think that's enough?
I agree with Mr. Higgins. Having done surveys, even when it's student surveys, family surveys, What we really felt strongly about is that we're going to have to ask families to do a survey per child this time.
Yep.
Oh, correct.
To get the
You're right. I
kind
forgot
of
about that.
data and
Yes.
feedback that each grade level needs. We can't do a family survey. They're going to have to do it per child.
That's correct.
So for
Yep.
some of our families, that's 3 to 6 children, depending on their situation.
Yeah, it
And
is.
even though it may only take 5 minutes, people are extremely busy and stressed.
5 minutes for 6 kids is half an hour.
So in my opinion, I would say, let us get the survey out Friday and give families a week. Then they can use
I
the
agree.
weekend, they can have
That's
next
great.
week, and then if we need to follow up, we can follow up. But I think a week's window is reasonable, and it still pushes the work you want to have happen, but it gives families the time they need
Yep.
to do it. Because there are families that are going to have to do multiple.
And you need the data.
That's a good point,
If you don't
Amy,
have,
I
if you
think.
don't have
And-
all the data,
And you're asking families to
that's
make
true.
some decisions,
Yeah.
which are going to require conversations. And for some families, it's going to be quick, and I know what I want, and click, 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 and for not going to be simple.
Yeah.
And it's going to be more complicated based on the child, the grade level, the school, their transportation issues, their work life. Like, it's going to be complicated for some families.
and also having to make a decision, because as we've talked, the piece about compassion, I agree with you. But the question, or a question along the lines of, will you be willing to stay hybrid or stay remote if another child, and again, I'm not sure it's going to be worded this way.
Right.
Is selected as a higher need than your child? That's a conversation that parents are going to have to
Yeah,
have.
we're going
And I
to
agree
be
with that,
very
yeah.
clear in the survey that this is not, we're asking you questions, but this is not a guarantee that we're saying we're opening schools for everybody by a
Right.
certain date.
Right.
People need to understand that we're going to do what we can, but it's going to be probably
our
a phased.
starting point.
This is our starting point to give us the data that we need to hopefully phase in and upgrade how many people we have at capacity. But it's in no way a signature in blood that we can do this right away.
And I'm anticipating too, I think when we look at numbers, that this could happen at one building, but not necessarily another too. I mean,
Right,
it
just like
just
your
be,
back 45
just for the
days.
fairness
Right.
of numbers,
And
it's
again,
not.
set aside staffing with sheer numbers, it may be, well, you've also got other scheduling that has to take place
Yeah.
K-4, but with sheer numbers and self-contained, that's one element you deal with. Erica has a couple of other dynamics. At the high school, they've got a multitude, so it may be
Yeah.
Right.
you progress up to the grade spans. but-
Which is how we decided that families are going to have to do multiple surveys if they have more than
Yeah.
one
Well, and
child.
it also makes the data easier to
Yes.
sort through, because
Yep.
then you're not having to be like,
That's right.
throw this one over to third grade
Yes.
and throw this one up to
Mm-hmm.
11th. Now, could we do Mr. Higgins, could we do a communication with the phone call prior to the survey going out so that people
Robocall.
know that it's coming?
Very
Well,
effective.
We've been very good at that over the
Yeah.
past
Yeah.
weekend.
Yes.
In fact,
Yes.
Laura's probably listening. She's probably going to get another email tonight to someone up first thing in the morning. But yes.
That way
it can go
parents
out-
know it's
It can go out
coming.
letting
like-
them know it's coming, can go out with it.
Yeah.
I think the
Perfect.
robocall is always so effective because it gets me to think,
Yeah.
oh, whoops, I
see
didn't check my
Ellsworth
email
School
for 3
Department.
days.
I see that phone number on my phone and I go, uh-oh.
Uh-huh. That's great. Thank you, Amy, for that perspective, because I think
Thank
that's
you.
very
Yeah.
interesting.
So I would like to hear just from my other administrators, hypothetically, to balance out the numbers, you know the difference between cohort days. Could you reach out to that number of students who you feel are high risk and invite them back and make it work by next Friday? Not this Friday, Friday following. Hypothetically. This is just a hypothetical.
By need is what.
Without, before getting the results of the survey?
Yeah, just to even out the I'm saying just bringing
Right,
the
to put you
cohort
at
days
capacity
closer
for
to. So if you've got this imbalance, well then it makes me think you have room for that many more students on that day. So I mean, let's say it's 20. Let's say it's a 20-person imbalance. Do you think you could identify 20, hypothetical if the number's 20 kids who are high risk that you could reach out to and possibly have those kids back by then and have the numbers still work? As far as without us making more bus runs.
Without making those ones.
I mean, it's not that making more bus runs are out of the question, but I just want to know if we are at that threshold.
But if we do that before this survey, so let's say that I contact 35 kids, they all want to come back, we get the survey results back. So I'm gonna have to tell some kids that took the survey they can't come back.
Well, there's going to be people who took the survey who are going to want to come back, who can't come back.
I think it's
Yeah.
just, I think what Abby's
But-
talking about is to, like, right now, we're not at capacity.
Right.
So what could we,
And I think
in
that's
the
what we
meantime, even
mentioned.
before adding more kids in addition to the capacity number?
We're not at capacity, but, again, and I talked with April earlier, with one of her grade levels, she's at capacity in, I think, on both days. Is that right, April?
Right, but we still have
Right,
room
so
for
maybe
other
the-
grades
No,
that
no,
are
but
not
I'm saying,
capacity.
Right.
those.
And we need to talk about that right now.
Yeah, so maybe
Because we
that
have
grade
kids that
doesn't
could be in
get-
school right now. So instead of waiting for this survey, that's what I'm saying.
The first phase is what Abby's trying to say, is there need,
Well, there's definitely need.
I mean, excuse me, is there room for students that are in need, as Dan mentioned, that we could determine, based off the numbers and the equality between those cohorts, is there room for any students to come back 5 days a week?
'Cause it seems
If
to me
they
like it
have
is.
a need.
If you're 20 kids shy on one day, bring back 20 kids. 20 kids who you feel are a high-risk need, reach out to. I think this is pretty elementary. And see, okay, we would like to talk to you about coming back. Would you be 5 days a week, would you be interested? If so, why are we waiting? Why not say, okay, come back Monday?
For my purposes, there's some planning that needs to take place, and it depends on the kids. I mean, I'm in a similar boat with April with a special ed piece.
Mhm.
Right.
Where
Mhm. Well,
that is
right.
that's a huge scheduling piece, it's a huge,
Right.
we have to move a lot of things around, and teachers need time to prepare for those kids to be here 5 days a week.
Mhm.
And making sure that, they have to switch things up where the way they have things set up and how they're teaching synchronously. There's a little bit more that goes into it, so
Yeah.
I don't know that it could happen by next Friday, but, I
Well,
think.
next Friday is kind of like a week and a half away. I mean,
But if
moving-
you think about it, Abby, if you've got a gray and a maroon, and this teacher is teaching maroon kids this lesson this day, and then that same lesson to the gray kids on this day and this day, then what is that child that's coming 5 days a
Well,
week
but then
benefiting
you
from
have a week
learning
and a
the
half to
same
catch
thing 2 days?
that kid up to where they need to be.
No,
And I understand when it
yeah,
comes to special ed, yes, there's a hiring need there. So obviously, we wouldn't be picking out that particular student right now. But that still means we have other students that could come back. We should still be filling every single seat we possibly could be filling.
So maybe instead of having a list and contacting parents to have kids come back next Monday, maybe it's compiling a list so that once the survey comes back and you can start.
No,
thinking
I'm
about
saying
those
before
moving parts.
survey. I'm saying before.
I know,
survey,
but what
yeah.
I'm saying is logistically, if it's
that's not-
logistically impossible.
I
that
just
if
don't,
they
I
just
can't
start
see that being logistically impossible to say, in a week and a half, can we bring back some of the kids who we have room for?
I think the big thing would be for leadership to talk about this tomorrow morning when they have their meeting and
other
consider
piece I'd
all
like to
those
put in
pieces.
The other thing I'd like to put in, with regard to the survey and the question that talks about would you be willing to stay hybrid in a certain situation, you may get to the point where you can bring more students who are at higher risk back with the results of the survey. But I think it's a good idea to let the group talk about it. They haven't gotten their agenda for tomorrow morning yet, so.
There it
And it's great for the group to talk about, but in the meantime, we're here tonight to talk about it. We need to come to a consensus as a board of what we want to do.
Well, I think we need to have the reentry plan team formed as soon as possible. Because those conversations, like that meeting needs to happen, leadership needs to meet, because they haven't had our input on that yet. So they need to have that meeting tomorrow morning.
Leadership has talked about this, and one of the biggest things that gives them the biggest headache is the criteria by which you determine need. Okay? But they've heard some feedback here. They've talked about it. I'm sure that each of them could go through in their minds and say, I could come up with 15 kids. But the question is going to be, we need to be as equitable and fair as possible in determining that need, because, I go back to the question that I asked the 5 of you. What I determine might be a need, and a higher need might not be the same as what Jen believes. And we need to have a rationale to back that up.
But I think we can figure
I
that out
think it puts these guys in a very
But
difficult
I
spot.
think that's
and
their job too.
Yeah.
As as the administrators, to go down through and and they need to come up with that criteria. We aren't with those students.
Right. And I think they understand too, based on this conversation, that we want to see this happening as quickly as logistically possible, and that we want things moving. We want, you know, even if we're not going back to all kids back in school 5 days a week, that we really want to start moving forward with getting the schools to capacity. So that means that we have to start, that the brains have to start working on how that's going to work.
It needs to be thoughtful.
Exactly.
I mean, we
Because
do
we
need
don't
this
want
to
to
be a thoughtful
bring
process.
kids back and have them be there for 2 weeks and then be like, oh my gosh, this is a disaster and you're not benefiting from it at all. So now go back home and come back.
I
in a couple
have
of
faith
weeks.
that it wouldn't be a disaster. I have faith that if we bring back, as I said, just enough to even out the cohorts, if we can handle this much on this day, there's no reason why we can't handle that much on the other day.
So I think we can all agree that that's step one, right? That's step one, and we need to let, you know, the administrators and leadership have that conversation with the intent of all of those puzzle pieces need to fit together, and maybe it isn't 20, but it's 5, and it
Right.
can happen, you
Yeah.
know, next week, because they know who it is that they are focusing on.
Yeah, see-
Because simultaneously, we have to be working on what can we be doing as a district to have some hiring incentives? What can we be doing to move this process along, because we need staffing. Like, this is a cry for help. We need staffing in our district, period.
Right.
And so we need to figure out, you know,
Well,
the
and
options
I think one of the
behind
big
that.
things, Abby, logistically is yes, that kids are going to have to get caught up. But if you have a student who's in school 5 days a week and they're getting taught the same lesson every Monday and Tuesday, and then the same lesson again, you know what I mean? Like, they get one lesson on Monday and then they get the same lesson again on Tuesday. then
And
they
that's
get
not
the lesson
happening
on-
at all grade levels. Some are,
Right.
some are
Right.
synchronous, and they're rolling right
Right.
along every day. I mean, look at the high
See,
school.
and I'm
So-
thinking of my younger levels. So,
And that's
so yes,
true.
it might work in some of them, but
Right.
like,
Right.
But it
like
can
just
still
I'm
work
thinking
where it can work.
logistic.
And I think we're
You know
all
what
on
I
that
mean?
same page.
Yeah.
And
So I would like to recommend that the committee that leadership have that conversation tomorrow morning and begin that committee. And so I actually we needed to figure out, I think this committee should have a board member or two, because then that keeps everybody in the loop, and we're rolling right along. And it, you know, so I've given this a lot of thought, because Dan and I had this conversation when we started rolling off this planning parent meeting. So I'd like to have Abby, if she would be willing to sit on that, and I would be willing to do so as well. We were just talking about the need coming up for another committee. I'm going to be getting to that. So I think the intent would be that we have to be gathering soon so that everybody can start scratching their heads and thinking outside the box and moving forward without a promise of a date, because we can't do that immediately, because we have data we need to collect and people need to start meeting. But I would like to say, if leadership has the opportunity, and like Dan said, you probably have those parents in mind or those teachers in mind that are just willing to step up and have that conversation, and the EEA, I think, could probably very easily pick a member that would be able to represent.
We could come up with staff members and parents tomorrow morning. I
Yep.
think that's an easy task, right, guys? Yeah.
So
That's
maybe
easy.
what Dan can do is, once that has been put in place, and you all have given your staff members and your parents input, Dan already knows who the parent representative is for that group that we met with.
Yep.
He now knows who the board members are. So as soon as those can gather, we can have an email go out. We can try and get a date set up for a meeting, initial meeting, and then
Yep,
we can roll from there.
that's easy.
Okay? Any other discussion about that topic?
I have not had any further questions.
You have not
or
had any
comments.
further
Nope.
questions? One of the topics that I'd like to bring up tonight, and it kind of goes on to this, that's why I want to do it right here, is we have been, I'm going to pull it up here because I want to make sure I'm wording this correctly, but our city council had reached out to our local representatives and wanted to advocate for the fact that we need to get students back in school and advocate at the legislative level of the guidelines that the governor and the Maine DOE and CDC and DHHS have put in place for schools, and advocate for the fact that as these different limitations that are changing for our state, but as Dan mentioned, not necessarily have we heard that direct communication for our schools. And they reached out, and I think, I mean, I've been hearing it statewide, that boards are also doing the same. And I think we need to have a conversation on that type of communication, or that conversation with our local representatives, which are Nicole Gorhowski and Louis Lucchini. They reached out to Paul because Paul was the legislative liaison, and indicating that they had received this communication. But I think as a board, we need to discuss how we would like to handle that, and moving forward, is that something that we find to be of importance, which I think as our discussions have gone along, because those guidelines do differ in many ways. And I think it's important to keep our representatives in the loop, and you may be able to, I know you had a conversation with Nicole, so.
Yeah, and I had a conversation with Louis also.
Yes.
And I think any time that I've brought anything forward to the our state legislator, I've had to have conversations with the board about where we, to make sure that I'm representing our board and not just my own opinions. And they want to hear what the board's view is, not just what my view is. So I'm very careful to, when I talk to them, not advocate for anything that I haven't vetted with the rest of the boards. I think we do need to have that conversation.
Yeah, and I liked how the city council did it, in that it was a letter that was signed from each city council member.
As taxpayers though, not as a city council.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I liked how they did that, so it wasn't like 5 different letters from 5 different people saying almost the exact same thing. It was like, we're coming together to state this issue that we see in our community.
I'm sure they appreciated that as well.
I have to say that I have some concerns about the way they did it, though, because, and I hope that we don't do it the same way, which is, we're not going to send a letter as private citizens from our personal email addresses.
Right. It would be from.
I think we should band together as board.
I
Yeah.
agree.
If the board, Paul, let you finish.
No, go ahead,
I'll say the same thing I was going to say.
And I would have liked to see the council, if they're going to take a stand like this and collaborate on a message, to have done it as council members, not as individual citizens. But I question how that collaboration took place with compliance with public meeting laws. But that's just an aside. But I think it's important for us as a board to have this conversation and relay our views to our elected representatives at the state level.
And my recommendation to you folks, if you're going to have that conversation, is that you have the conversation, whatever conclusion you come to. If you want to have a communication go out, take an action on it as a board.
Correct,
And
and that's
send
what
it
I was
that way.
hoping we could do.
Yep.
Because I think the information that, like I said, as things have changed so rapidly, and we
They haven't
could
as
come
much
to
with
us.
school.
I'm sorry?
They haven't as much with school regulations.
Right, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
and we could come to a little bit of a little stalemate here, where the regulations are changing for the public, but they're not changing for our schools, and that puts us in a place of limitation, and I think those representatives need to have that understanding, and this actually came back to when I had thought about the parent meeting. It was to have a follow-up with our legislators, because that piece of our public having, or our parents, and our people involved in our school system have that piece of their voice heard, then it's really our, duty to take that forward if we are in a position where we can't change where we're sitting right now because of the guidelines and the limitations. So I think we do need to do something and have a consensus, and whether it's somebody draws something, Paul would be a great person to do that, draw something up, and then we would have you know, the ability to view it, and then, like Dan said, we would need to vote on that.
So bring it to our next workshop meeting?
We can't vote at a workshop.
We could do a 5-minute.
We could do a
5-minute
quick
special meeting.
on Zoom.
Yeah.
That is still allowed.
Yeah. And I would think if somebody were to, if for any reason someone was not feeling like that letter was something they could agree upon, they simply could not sign it if they.
Can I make a recommendation, guys?
Or not vote.
Would it be worth
Yeah.
something being drafted up, and you have a workshop scheduled on the 23rd?
Mhm. We could have a special meeting.
Draft something up,
before.
have a special meeting to precede that.
We're getting really good at the special
You guys are
meeting
getting
before
pretty
a
good at that.
workshop, just saying.
It's the same night, we've already got council chambers arranged for
Yep.
that evening.
Yeah.
Right.
And that gives Paul time to work on that, and then.
Perfect.
Bring something in, can send it out to you, you can have a conversation, and then move on to the workshop afterwards.
Awesome.
Okay.
And again, you're only talking 2 weeks away. Again, who knows what's going to change between now
Exactly.
and then.
Right.
But we have it in place if
My
it's-
sense is, from what I'm hearing, those health and safety requirements that are in place right now are not likely to change in the next 2 weeks. So you've got time to formulate something and have a good conversation on it and take action as a board.
Excellent.
That sound good?
Mhm.
All right, I
Yep.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you,
You're
guys. All right, any other further discussion? No other comments either, Beth?
Nope, I just checked a second ago.
Okay, so we're
Other
gonna.
than Laura did say that she is watching both feeds and it appears as though they're both working.
Okay,
So-
That's good.
thank you. Item J3, second read and discussion of proposed 2020-2021 Ellsworth School Department school calendar.
I sent this all to you folks, so you've all got it, right? Okay, good. And just so you know, I reached out to all 5 associations. I got feedback from the administrators, who also got feedback from teachers. And it's amazing, this is the year that I've received the least feedback I've ever received in 7 years. Shocker, right? But I received enough feedback that if you look back at the 2 versions you looked at for a first read, one of them had the first student day as, I believe, August 30th. The other one had the first student day, September 1st. Based on the feedback I received, it was very clear that the preference of feedback was to have the first student day for grades K through 9 be September 1st, bringing all kids back on September 2nd, and having our 2 pre-service days, August 30th and 31st. Okay? And I think one of the reasons for that feedback was, for our staff, again, it's been a long year for students, it's been a long year for families, it's been a long year for staff. They're going to be working over the summer anyway, but that's a little bit of extra time to get prepared for the year. So what you have in front of you is a calendar that would have the first 2 days for pre-service be August 29th and 30th, first student day for K-9, September 1st. And the rest of the calendar was very much the same as the other version, the only difference being, and it may be a moot point, but the only difference being there are 3 storm days in this one rather than 4. But again, we also talked about, and again, also for our community, this is predicated on us being back in school 5 days a week with everybody. Let's hope that's the case. But if we get to the point where we used up a number of snow days and it was a particularly snowy year unlike this one, we could make a remote, we could make a remote day work for a day.
Right.
This is a recommendation that comes forward for you, so I'm asking for a second read and approval of this calendar.
I make a motion to accept a second read and approval of the 2021-22 ESD school calendar as presented.
I second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you, guys. We'll get that out on the website as soon as we can.
Well done.
All right, so item 5, obviously.
4.
Um,
I can do this
4.
quick. I can do this
I'm
quick.
so
Don't worry
sorry.
about it. Hey,
Sounds
guys,
right over you.
this will be the quickest budget update you've ever had from me.
I'm sorry, Dan.
Wishful thinking.
No, it will be, and you can ask our leadership team. They got a 30-second budget update last week. Is that right, guys? So it'll be a little longer than that, but we are making progress, although I've got to tell you, it's a very challenging year. Our folks are very, very busy. They're working very hard, but we've had presentations already from facilities maintenance, adult ed, IT, K4, 5-8. We're meeting with special education tomorrow. Transportation is ready, food service is ready. I asked our finance committee, which is Jen and Paul, for dates for next week. So typically we like to wait until we've received presentations from everybody, then we go to the next step. I'm going to move forward. So we're going to be meeting with them hopefully 2 days next week to get all of these presented while we're meeting with the rest of the people. And it may mean that on the 23rd, there's a pretty in-depth conversation on budget. I think it's critical because don't forget, we typically have you approve a budget, sometimes the regular April meeting, most often a special April meeting later in the month, which I think is going to be necessary this year. And we need to have it done by then. So there's a lot of work left to be done, but a lot of progress being made. So that was 48 seconds.
Boom. Good timing. All right. Okay, now I can move on to J5.
Yep.
I'm so sorry. Okay, so this item is going to be the formation of an advisory committee for a climate survey for our district. And I had spoke to Dan. Obviously, we have policy on school advisory committees, and so we want to make sure that the discussion for this and then the assignment for this has its clear and intense, like all of the purposes are clear and that we have the guidelines in place. It would be my understanding that as a board, we would want two board members to be able to work on this and have, this is kind of be what they can come up with for a survey, so that work needs to get done first, and then obviously that information will come back to the full board so that we can move forward with it. The discussion needs to include timeline. What are we looking at? This, and that this committee will then dissolve. So this isn't something that's going to be standing, it's for a one-time purpose only, so it's going to run as so. And then in addition to that, this climate survey, the recommendation that I had received was that this have some expertise advice that goes along with it, and then also be vetted by our attorney before it goes out. So we need to have that, we can have that discussion now, but we need to set some parameters and kind of go from there.
So the committee would be for the sole purpose of creating the survey, distributing the survey, and then presenting the results of the survey, and then it would dissolve after that.
Or did I hear you say creating the survey, developing it, putting it in place, getting vetting from the attorney, bringing it back to the board for full
Yeah, the board would
approval?
need to approve it.
Then the board would distribute the survey.
Then the board would,
Or
it doesn't need to
direct-
be the committee per
Yeah,
se,
yeah,
but
right.
the board would direct that. I guess we could.
So develop the survey, bring it back to the board for approval, and then have it vetted?
You
Maybe
could
that-
actually do it either way.
I think
Or
the
both.
committee could have the opportunity to have it vetted.
Okay.
So that if there's working pieces there.
Right, or if
when
there's
it comes to the
questions about
board,
questions.
Gotcha.
it's where it needs to be at before it goes out. I think that would be probably a little clearer and smoother, and then we're not bouncing back and forth.
So Jenna, an advisory committee or any, even a standing committee could have members other than the board and the superintendent. Are we thinking of having anyone else from our school community participate in this advisory committee?
I had not.
I don't think we should.
I think the committee members can probably, especially if we are looking to get advice in creation of the survey and then have it vetted. I don't believe we would need more. I don't think it needs to be a collaborative.
Especially since the climate survey is going to go to.
Right,
It's going to be distributed to the staff of the district, so.
right. For that reason, I think we keep it.
That would be.
Okay,
my-
I was just curious.
Yeah, I kind of
wasn't-
had read down through
I wasn't
that.
trying to
Right.
No.
lead it towards that, but.
No.
Good to clarify.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and is this climate survey, is that going to be for staff only, or staff and parents,
Staff.
parents, students?
This is just, this particular survey, I think, will just be for staff, just for our district. Because I think then we're balancing with, not that I don't think it's important that we, at some point, get a climate of our families, but I think it's important for us to focus on one thing at a time, and I think our families are going to be having a lot of decisions coming up, and the district could possibly be needing their input in other manners right now, so.
Right. For this particular one, just this one, I think that's a really good direction to take, personally.
I think it's, so
And then we could just say, look at the committee at the end of April to dissolve.
yeah, I think once we've got all of
Yeah.
our data back. We
Right,
don't
some
need
of
that
the-
committee per se. It does say in here, if something comes up and that there's an additional need or there's something that's
Right.
related to that, we can keep that committee in place, but I
Mhm.
don't think I don't see a need
Right.
for that, but.
No.
So we do need to discuss timeline. So my intention was to assign that committee tonight. And then I'm thinking we should probably have a review of it at our workshop. Would we have time in that
I would-
workshop in the end of March?
I-
We're thinking budget, right, for the
Well,
March workshop?
I'm in hopes that the budget's going to be in pretty good shape
Okay.
by then, so.
Is this also something that we could, create some, this is me asking a question of, as a new board member and not totally certain how this works. Is this something that could be an initial list created and shared for feedback via email, or does that all have to happen verbally in the public?
No, it needs to have, the
Okay.
two committee members need to actually do the work.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to
And I think.
just clarification.
I think along the lines with the expertise advice, you would have those questions that you could bounce off somebody.
Right.
And then you're gonna have the opportunity to have it vetted. So I
Yes.
think in all of those conversations, the committee itself would have that opportunity. And then, of course, if the board, when we talk at the
Right.
March workshop, if there's questions and we're not comfortable with it and it's not where we all feel it should be, then we have the
Then we do it
opportunity
again.
to bounce it back. But I think moving into that time frame to keep everything on track, I think we should let the committee do its work and then report back at that March workshop. And then if it's the consensus of the committee that is great and we'd like to move forward with it, then I think it should be sent out pretty soon thereafter so that we have data back for our April meeting or our board meeting.
And we're fortunate, we have a group of very articulate writers here.
Yeah, I think it will work really well to have it all happen
Right.
relatively quickly. And we're not dragging into the end of the school year because we do have to be aware of the fact that our staff are very busy.
Right.
And they will also have to, have a survey to fill out, so. But the feedback, I think, is important before the end of the year, so. So if we're all in agreement with that, then I'm prepared to assign that committee to those to see if they'll accept. So I would like to assign Kelly and Beth. I know the strengths of actually getting the survey out was something that I had given a lot of consideration to, and that's been something that Beth has been able to do and has done in her private job, her public job. So if that will work, then we would ask you guys to do.
Yes, I would as well. Yep.
Y'all got some writing to do.
I know, there's a lot of letters and whatnot, but, okay. So I think that would be the direction we'll move in for right now.
I do have a.
Should you take a vote to form the committee based upon the guidelines you put in place?
We have to.
I think so.
As I look at the policy, it's
I read
interesting,
down-
the policy says the board can form.
Right.
It doesn't say by vote, but if you look down in the lower part of the policy, it says it would dissolve by a certain date or by board action. You could make the interpretation that it needs to be formed by a
By
vote.
board.
Okay.
It's not gonna hurt you to do it.
Better to have the action and not have needed it
It's
than
not gonna hurt you to do it.
than vice versa.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's possible we don't need to take board action, but I think we may as well, because
Right.
that covers.
Okay.
our-
So I'll go ahead and make the motion to,
Form an advisory committee for
yeah.
climate survey consisting of
I wrote it
Kelly
down and now I
Kenny,
can't find it.
and
Form an
Beth-
advisory committee
Kenny,
to perform a
Elizabeth
climate survey.
to be dissolved upon completion of work on or about April 30th.
There we go, that.
Boom.
I second that.
So that was Jen and Kelly.
Sort
Yes.
of, thanks, Dan. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
Before we do calendar announcements, I do have one
Okay, thank you.
last public comment, and this is from Dale Hamilton, and that was in regards to Paul's comments about the letter, and that, Paul, you should gather your facts before you imply impropriety on the part of anyone. The letter expressed concern with a request to the local legislative delegation. It addressed a number of issues of concern. It was not a representation of the community and was made clear of that fact. And that's the only other.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Item K, calendar and announcements. So we do have school board workshop Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021, 6 o'clock here in the city council chambers.
Special meeting also.
Special meeting to lead into that one.
What was that, for 5 minutes for something?
But it all starts at 6.
What were we gonna have a special meeting for?
5 minutes to, oh. No, I got communication.
Can you tell it's 9:30?
Conversation, communication regarding health and safety guidelines. Paul was going to draft something.
Oh, yes. There it is.
Paul's letter.
There it is.
You can
I
tell
feel like
it.
this is biblical.
3.5
A letter from
hours
Paul to the apostles.
All right.
Can you tell it's 9:30?
Yeah.
We're like, wait, that was like 2 hours ago. What were
And
we
then
talking about?
also school board meeting Tuesday, April 13th, 2021 at 6 o'clock here in the city council chambers.
Put it in.
Having no further business, I make a motion to adjourn.
I second that.
Third, fourth, fifth.
Discussion? No. All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
9:28.
28? Okay. 28.
I don't know. I'm trying to see slashes up there. I don't have my phone out.